Are we good to go?
Give it one more second here. Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Committee of the Whole meeting for March 15th, 2022, being held electronically as per current regulations. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish First Nation. We have, and for people watching, we have a changed agenda. The project with respect to the foot of School Road and the Stonehurst project is being moved to a separate meeting, and we'll be establishing a special committee date for that meeting to devote the project the time that it requires. So we have a changed agenda before us, and I would ask for, having called the meeting to order, I would ask for approval of the agenda as changed. Councillor Lumley, Councillor Andretti, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And I'd like to make a motion at this point to receive all the reports and with respect to this agenda. Councillor Andretti, thank you. Councillor Ledwig, all in favor? Thank you. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Infrastructure to review the 2022 budget and the 2022 to 2026 5-year capital plan. Director Newman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kroll. So you have some spreadsheets in front of you that you likely recognize from last year. And you also have a staff report just giving a very quick or short blurb on the general projects. And just a couple of housekeeping items. The priorities of the projects, although they are A, B, C, D, and E, that doesn't entirely mean importance. The A's are largely committed, and which means there's not that much opportunity to make any changes to those because there's a contract in place or what have you. The prioritization from B's are completion of previous year's work. So we already started that stuff. We've got approved grant works, works where we can work in synergy with others, whether that's inside or outside of the town. And works that will reduce expenditures and improve efficiencies or generate revenue. C's are important, and those are items that are asset management related and climate change related. And then discretionary are ones that are beautification, parks upgrades, some community requests that aren't otherwise prioritized. And then the E's, we started doing that a couple or 3 years ago. Very handy for staff because those are the ones that are listed as potential grants or projects that we might be able to realize funding from grants or community amenity contributions. So the E's are the first place that we look when we when staff are looking at grant opportunities. I'm not going to share my screen right now, but I will after I've briefly gone through some of the reports, or sorry, some of the projects that I just want to highlight. One of the other housekeeping items is right now with the items in front of you for 2022, is that we're a little bit above $81,000 over the available budget we have assuming, I believe, a 2% increase for cost of living. And if I'm incorrect on that, the Director of Planning should probably speak up now. If she doesn't, then I'm correct. Good enough. So if you wanted to do all of the projects on the list, then there would be a corresponding tax increase in addition to the 2% cost of living, essentially, increase in order for us to more or less stay at the same level of service that we have now. So going through the list of projects, you're obviously more than welcome to be asking questions on any of them. They're just particular ones that might provide a little additional information for you, or some explanation from staff is necessary. So first is just 1.1. That is the pedestrian and cycle links. The locations of that have been already identified in the grant program. We've got cost estimates for those, and we are involving track in discussing each one as they as we move forward on it, and that work will need to be completed this year. So looking forward to seeing more cycle infrastructure going in and pedestrian infrastructure going in than has before. And we have mentioned before about the potential of creating a map, and that is on our list, showing the work that this council and previous council has done in regards to active transportation, and it's quite significant. Item 111 is the Pebbles Beach bank stabilization. You may recall that we barricaded that off initially and then signed it, partially because of the bank stabilization on next door properties, but also because of the our own bank stabilization issues there. So the this is being split up into two projects. Initially, it's going to be to remove the two retaining walls that are bowing out noticeably, and in some places are rotting. So that's a significant concern for us. And so the intent is to pull, we had a geotechnical engineer out there, and the intent is to pull the top of the slope back so that it lessens how steep it is. And that obviously will impact the level area of the park. However, not a huge degree, but it's something that we would be talking to the area residents about and keeping them informed. And then rebuilding the actual stairs, which are uneven and yeah, uneven.
Can I just interrupt you for a moment, Director Newman? I see CIO Machado has something that he wants to say.
Yeah, we're just noting that Councilor Ludwig has put her hand up a couple of times here. Just a couple of questions there. Yeah,
sorry, and I don't have you on screen. I'm looking through my list, and so
okay.
Councilor Kroll, it'll be, or Deputy Mayor Kroll, it'll be your job.
Okay, sorry, Councilor Ludwig.
Okay, great, thank you, and thanks, Maddie.
And I was sorry, Councilor Ludwig, your hand tends to disappear into your blurred background unless it's right in front of you.
Okay, thanks. I'll try to make note of that. I just want to be clear on what it is that Director of Infrastructure is kind of walking through for us right now. The document that we're reviewing at the moment is the description, I take it, of the projects that are being proposed for the 2021 5-year financial plan, correct?
2022.
It says 2021, right? I guess.
What have you got? It says 2021. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's probably just a typo from it being renewed last year. That's fine. So I just want to be clear that is what you're walking us through right now, staff's recommendations for the priorities for this year, and does staff feel that they have the capacity, the staffing capacity, to fulfill all these projects if council were to say yes, rubber stamp, they're all good as is?
These are a combination of projects that are carryovers from last year that were previously approved. They are projects that we are aware of that are council priorities. And then there are other ones which are you wouldn't necessarily be as familiar with necessarily. It's just the day-to-day kind of asset renewal projects. And these are ones that are able to fit within the budget. And although I don't even want to necessarily say that they're staff recommendations, I suppose the asset management ones are staff recommendations. And the safety ones are staff recommendations. And then, yes, as far as staff capacity is the capital works, we have a varying degree of involvement that we can bring urban systems in to assist with, for instance, contract administration, et cetera. And so we will be looking at that closer as we schedule all the work in to determine how much of that sort of contracted admin and inspections, et cetera, that might need to be sent to urban and how much we may have time for. And these also on the one side of the spreadsheet themselves, you'll see the department that is responsible for that work.
Do you follow up, Councillor Ludwig?
No, that's good enough for now. I'll probably have more questions real long, but that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Dunvetti.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Perhaps I wonder if we can interrupt because, you know, as the director explained the project, it will be a good idea just to, if we have questions about the project. So the first one, the pedestrian cycle links on the amount of 643,000.
Yep.
Have we used this money already? This is a work in progress or this is brand new? Or
we started it last year. So we had a grant of 675,000. And so we started by putting in, we put in bike lanes to join up to the work on Venture Way. We've done some preliminary, well, actually the design work is underway for pedestrian crossing at near IGA Mall and Venture Way. And we have some projects that are going to be integrated with other projects such as a water main project on Venture Way. And then we're going to be doing the bike work in conjunction with that. So there's more or less, we are kind of separating them into 6 distinct projects, and the amount of engineering and so on varies from project to project. And as I say, any of them that have options, I suppose, we meet with TRAC and discuss those.
Just for clarification, Director Newman, of the 675,000 we received, we still have 643,000 available in that grant funding.
Slightly less than that because we have spent some this year.
Okay, thank you. Carry on, sir. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dendretti.
Thank you. It's just to follow up on the because we had a discussion, and actually even the TRAC sent us a letter, and then there was many other letters of support for an update of the Action Transportation Plan. So all the work that this money is committed, is it something, like I don't remember seeing a recent report of what is the schedule and on what is the priority. Mm-hmm. I've seen some work happening, right? I've seen some work happening in North Road and Gibson's Way, and so I'm just trying to understand. I know we discussed the fact that well, we didn't discuss here in council, but we all maybe we just suggested that we would be interested in plan. We sent some emails, I believe Councillor Ledwig sent too, and we got letters of support. So and there's funding right now for the BC government, right, to apply. So is it possible that we use this funding that is here actually down the line for some 20 annual active transport improvement? Is it different than this pedestrian cycle links? And is there any way that we could use this funding to contribute to half of the plan and maybe apply for the grant? I'm just wondering because no.
So what happens with a grant application is that you create a vision, I suppose, of what you're trying to do.
Okay.
You write that, you provide breakdowns of each of those project costs, and then that's what we're moving forward with. I'm guessing it was probably 2 years ago that we would have presented it to you, because then we received the grant, several months later, and then we're now moving forward on that. So the scope of the work has already been established. Now, where we may have some ability to perhaps do more on one of those locations is if one of the other, where I'm calling 6 projects, end up costing less than what was estimated. And then we have money left over. I wouldn't want to leave that on the table. I would be, recommending some other use for that is consistent with the project and the project locations.
CAO Machado and then Councillor Ladwig or Lumley.
Through Mr. Acting Mayor, the work that went into this grant, the 655, goes back to planning from our still existing transportation plan and some of the work from the age-friendly planning. It's just been we had the Gibsons way, for example, got some money there, and this is another the remaining portions. This question around the update to the plan, there's a separate amount for that identified, and that would be sort of the next level of planning. So they're not one or the other. That there's a future planning on that could probably use an update, and I think the director of planning has also mentioned that. So yes, and that's the part that needs some more work.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley.
Thank you. I think I know, because it's a big screen and there's lots of projects on it, and the director's already touched on the fact that we can go over budget. I think, I don't want to speak for Councillor Ladwig, but I think what her intention of her question was that, should we be, tackling or attempting to put all this into one budget, when I know if someone calls the town, the town promises them, call them back within 2 weeks. And I know you guys are, like, the departments are kind of stretched so thin now. It seems a little bit crazy to think that, hey, let's apply for some more grants and let's do more work, when, there's been a steady stream of things taking longer maybe than they should. And I'm not trying to be hypercritical of any one department or any one individual, but even just the project, the Persephone Point project, the developer thought that it took way too long to finally, when he put all his paperwork in for his subdivision approvals or whatever, he just thought that, like, he wanted to start that in October, and he thought legitimately, based on, he's a developer, he's done many projects, he thought he could have, and they just started like recently. So I don't know, I like I said, I don't want to speak for her, but like, there's maybe a larger picture of saying, well, maybe we should scale some of these things back just a bit, and let everybody get caught up, and instead of trying to over commit and then just get further and further behind. I don't know. Like I said, I don't speak for it, but I just wonder if that's maybe a possibility, that we just kind of go, okay, let's focusing on what we have in front of us before we start tackling more and more grant applications and jobs. That's just my thinking. So,
Director Newman.
So the 675 is already basically said and done. I understand, though we've never done it, I understand it's really bad form to receive a grant and then not use that money, because that means that other people could have used that money to do the project. And so as I say, the 675, I would say is off the table. That needs to be spent.
Oh, no, I'm just saying generally, big picture, that's all.
No,
Not
and
specific jobs.
we have definitely heard more from the development community, and if we've heard, chances are you have as well, about how long it takes certain things, and that is a level of service that we are able to offer, with everything that staff have on their plate and how often things need to go to council and what have you. So that could certainly be part of the discussion, is to say, yeah, scale back on some of the capital projects so that we have potentially more time to process development applications. Happy to have that chat about what those, if we were to, if staff was to pick off some of those projects, as to, it wouldn't hurt us to put that off for a year or two. Be more than happy to identify those ones, in the interest of providing a higher level of service, I suppose, to development community. And when I say development community, whether it's somebody just doing a subdivision on their own parcel, dividing it into two, or a commercial project or larger developer, whatever. I'm be more than happy to have that chat, and I think it's a good point.
Thank you.
Councillor Ladwig and then Councillor Danvetti.
So first of all, thank you, Councillor Lumley. That was what I was getting at. I was still needing time to kind of think through what I was struggling with. And I think what I'm struggling with is actually this process, really. I'm feeling the need to have a work planning exercise, because what's before us right now is a budget, but we all know that all these projects realistically can't get completed, or they wouldn't have been rolled over from 2021. So obviously they're not all going to get done. And I'm feeling the need for us to have a collective council discussion about what our priorities are. The other thing I'm struggling with is obviously some of the projects that aren't, when you go, I mean, there's different formats to be looking at here, but on the Excel tables, some of the projects that are already committed. So there's two commitments. There's the A category, and now there's the E category. Obviously the E category, if you've already got funding for them, well, they're a commitment. Or, okay, sorry, whatever's gotten grant money. So we already know.
That's just A's.
Okay, so just A's, okay.
Just A's.
Regardless, I'm feeling like I would like to have a work planning exercise where we identify as a council what our priorities are, and then we have an honest conversation about what staff members are going to be the lead on these projects. Because from what I see, there's way more work here than the number of staff that we have in the infrastructure. That's just from what I'm looking at. And so, to Councillor Lumley's point, I'm reluctant to approve or support a budget that I feel is going to compromise on our service to the community. And so I'm needing to have a conversation where we really get clear about the high priorities for us that on our last year on council here, and we improve our service standards in the community. That's what I'm after.
Okay, before we go to Councillor Danvetti, Director Newman, would you care to respond?
Yeah, so we're bringing this list of projects forward to you. As I say, I gave you the explanation why, and we as staff are understanding that we are going to hear back from council as to projects that are a priority or are not, and then we come back to you with a revised list going, that's what it looks like. And one of the things, listening to Councillor Lumley and Councillor Ladwig, that I can quickly do right in front of you is to identify the projects that are not going to hurt putting off. Where I get concerned is where we are potentially putting off a project that could actually save us money in the long run, or it's going to cost us more if we put it off. And as I say, I can identify those. The intent was to give council as much time right now during this meeting to discuss these items. And all I wanted to do right at the get-go is just give you some brief background on some of the ones that you may not be aware of. I've got maybe 4 or 5 more, and that's it. The conversation is fully over to you, and we can fool around with the spreadsheet, and I can give you, or we can give you some indication as to what could get dropped and so on and so forth, and making sure that we've got your priorities in there too. And we've got planning staff here, O&M staff, and capital staff.
And just for clarification, before we go to Councillor Dandretti, the 50 projects that are before us, Director Newman, are infrastructure works. In addition to that workload, there's stuff that comes up through outside projects like Gospel Rock and other building projects in the community. So, I think council is trying to say, you've already got a big pile of stuff on your plate, and we're looking for ways that we can just make everyone, take a bit of the load off and make it possible that, people aren't burning out with the workload. Or the expectation of having to do it and not being able to fulfill commitments. And at that point, I'll go to Councillor Dandretti.
Thank you. It's just in a nutshell, what are the projects for the active transportation for the 643?
Okay, there is a crossing, a pedestrian crossing going in at the corner of Glassford and crossing over to Dougal Park, so the other end from where the closure is. And that involves some curbing and some bump outs and pavement marking. There's a continued bike lane from the intersection of Prowse, Gower Point, and Dougal by the public market there up to South Fletcher and to the intersection of South Fletcher and Gower Point, so right across the frontage of Dougal Park. There's signage, some curb bump outs, some pavement markings from Marine Drive through town to the public market. Largely the infrastructure is happening there, or no significant infrastructure because there's limited room. There's also some bike racks, some signage, and then you move out to Upper Gibsons, and there's the continuation of the bike lane that has happened in front of the 2 Venture Way development properties that were done by Macon. And there's a chunk that is missing between the improvements that they did and the improvements that GBS had done on Venture, a number of years ago now, 5 years ago, I guess. And so it's just a continuation of that multi-use path. There is a crosswalk at Payne and Venture going in with some sort of signals, flashing lights or what have you, that we're just getting a design on right now. And there is a section of trail linking up Woodsworth with Sunnycrest Mall, and that might be it. Although no, there's also a continuation of the bike lane on Mahon that would link to the trails on, to the bike lane that we did on Venture by the Blackfish. There is a whole section on this on the website if you want to see the maps and so on. I can bring them up if you give me a few minutes, but I'm not sure if that gives you enough indication as to what is on there.
I appreciate. And Deputy Mayor, so what is the 21 for improvements? How is different from, because it's also active transportation improvement?
Yeah, that one is one that we always put forward, and it is for very minor works. Like this past year we did, we fixed a trail on the end of Bowles Lane It came out looking really good, and then some switchbacks were put in order to make it more comfortable for people walking down there and to stop the washout. There's on this one, it was extending this year, one of the things was extending the sidewalk on Mahan to the trails, the Mahan Trail, because it's very muddy in there, and people with wheelchairs or scooters have a difficult time making their way from White Tower Park to Mahan Road itself. And there's other sorts of, they're kind of bigger than a maintenance project and smaller than a capital project in a way. And so we try and do improvements each year to our network. And, of course, if council felt that, we're spending enough on the pedestrian cycle links, that's certainly fine. It wouldn't give us a budget to do those smaller improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Proceed, Director Newman.
Okay, so just briefly going back to the staff report, we stopped at the bank stabilization. We've got the White Tower Pond expansion with an increased budget, and it was awarded in 2021. However, there were some delays through permitting and some archaeological investigation, and the town may need to go back out to tender, and that money, if we did, the shortfall would come out of drainage DCCs, which would require some internal borrowing from the sanitary DCCs to cover the shortfall, and then those DCs are paid back into the sanitary DCC fund.
Okay, just a quick question there, if I may, sir. It was delayed because of the archaeological sort of find that was initially made. My understanding was the original contractor did give us a window that they would honor the quote that was originally tendered. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, the first delay was waiting for the province to provide us with permitting to work in and about the stream. And then that was followed by another delay with the archaeological find. Now there is some possibility that Pirate may have some difficulty completing the contract, in which case that would make their agreement with us, might force us to go back out to tender on that. And we are investigating that a little bit more, but that's where we're at right now. And in order to cover that eventuality, we have increased the budget accordingly.
Okay, thank you. So there, at this point, we don't really have any idea when work on that site might resume.
No, no, we don't. The last we had heard is that the archaeological aspects of it could be in place by March. So we're in that month now, of course. And then we are looking further into discussions with Pirate to determine whether or not we have to retender. Fortunately, as far as the tendering process goes, we've got all the documentation already done, so we don't need to wait on that. But then you've got your tender period, etc.
Okay.
And so we're still, our intent is to still get it completed this year.
Thank you. Go ahead.
You'll see one of the carryovers as well. 1.15 is the lot creation on Glassford. We already have a resolution from council to proceed with this. However, I'll tie that discussion in with the Glassford traffic calming discussion. But I just wanted to mention that to you. Tree planting, again, we've got a budget of $3,000, and that is and a similar size budget for the next 4 years after that. And those funds are coming from the replacement tree fund that those monies are collected through the administration of the tree bylaw. Pavement rehab, priority 1 and 2, the budget's higher than usual because we're carrying over some of the funds from last year. And actually, just to take that opportunity just to speak to something that Councillor Ladwig had said, is the significant carryover that we had. That was largely attributable to 6 months without a capital project coordinator. So you may recall we had good fellow Shane came in to assist us with that, was hired, and I think he was here for 5 or 6 months. And then largely because of housing prices, he was offered a job and chose to move back to the interior because he and his girlfriend just did not see an opportunity that they would be able to buy. And so we were 6 months without that person running the capital projects. So that meant half the year was gone as far as doing any of these works. And we now have Kelly with us, who's proving more than capable to be taking on these projects. So that's one of the things that has changed as far as the amount of carryover that we should expect to see from 2022 to 2023.
Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know from doing this for like, I don't know, 7.5 years, I guess now. And I remember in a long time ago when it's pavement, I mean, you were big on pavement and of course, you know, it should be a priority, but do you have any indication, or do you ever track like how far we're behind on some of these carryover items, like things that might be important? Like do you ever do that, or things just get carried over, or do you say, hey, we're actually 4 years behind on our asphalt servicing for our roads? Or
no, we're you know, the worst we've been is about a year behind on asphalt, because last year we carried some over from the year before. I'm anticipating that we're going to be spending the 500,000 this year, and sometimes those are combined with other projects. For instance, if we're putting in a water main or doing some sewer work, then we'll be setting aside those monies to repave that road after the fact, if it is already in bad shape. One of the other things that I want to do is to be looking at setting aside some money in a reserve so that we continue to budget that whatever we can afford for the paving, but we hang on to it because we know, in the one I'm thinking of right now, is that we've got a development, Gospel Rock, that needs to run a sanitary line from roughly Franklin Road all the way to the sewer treatment plant. The pipe would be in one lane. We could, and they will be responsible for paving that. We could set aside enough money to pave the other lane at the same time. So it's something that I want to eventually get to, where we have a cushion for those larger projects, and then also the day-to-day stuff. The other thing that I do want to do is to identify the amount of paving that is getting done either through other projects such as a water main replacement, because a water main replacement can also fund the asphalt, and then how much work is being done by developers. And so the number that we've been using for our annual amount is 600,000. And so we're saying, yeah, we're only funding half of that. I would like to know out of the remaining 300, and I haven't done it yet, is to how much money is the development community putting in on doing, you know, DCC projects or what have you, that actually do offset that amount that we can't fund, which would give us a little bit better idea on how much we should be, how much more we should be funding through taxation.
Do you have follow-up, Councillor Lumley? Otherwise, I'm going to CAO Machado.
Through Ms. Mayor, just further to the comment from Councillor Lumley, I think when you first term, a lot of our discussion was around roads and buildings. We were quite a bit behind then as well. We've certainly done some work there, but there's a couple of strong trends that we're somewhat trying to catch up with. One is a lot of the subdivisions that were being planned are now putting works in the ground, and that development support is one area that certainly we need more resources. And secondly, a lot of the works you'll see even next year and the year after are more getting caught up with our natural assets policy, restoring the foreshore areas, which we've known for a few years now. Some of that damage, I think over the next few years, you'll see more proposals from us to reinvest and restore these natural areas. The tree planting will show up also in the next few years. Restoring creeks, those 3 areas alone will take significant dollars, and there's some grants, and we have to adjust for that.
Thank you. Councillor Dendretti.
Thank you. I'm just curious, are we looking at the agenda of the projects in order, or we're looking at the spreadsheet? How are we gonna go? Because there's some project that you jumped, but I don't know, is this, we're gonna talk after? I just want to be able to follow up.
The intent from my end is to just touch on the ones that you might not have the information on, and then let you add it with the list on the spreadsheet. And
Okay.
so I just want to give you the background so that you have information that you need in order to have your discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Am I good to just carry on
ahead,
this?
sir.
Okay. The Rerode multi-use path, that is a continuation from Park to North Road. And the reason this one is on here is because there's a potential for some cost saving working with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and the SCRD. We are still investigating those options with the RD. There may be an opportunity for grant monies, and this would be one of those ones where we would be saving money to be able to do it with the planned water main replacements that the regional district have to do and will be doing this year. They've already awarded that contract, and this would and could potentially piggyback on that. So that's why that one's on there. And then I am going to, with the deputy mayor's position or permission, to hand that over to Leslie Ann to, she wants to speak on 1.25 as well as some other of her planning projects, and then it'll bounce back to me again.
Just before we go to the Director of Planning, with respect to 1.22 and the Rerode multipath, I had occasion to meet with the RCMP and the regional district and the District of Sechelt today on policing matters, and there's some other things there I'll address later. But one of the things that I think is really going to be important is this work that's being done with respect to the Church Road well, and in turn, the implication that that's going to have on Reed Road between North Road and Payne and Henry, with respect to the work the regional district's doing with respect to Church Road well. I think it's going to be really important that we communicate out the activity that's happening there and the impact it's going to have on traffic going through the upper village, because I think in time, a lot of people are going to avoid that route because of the work going on, and it'll put that traffic possibly onto Cemetery, but more likely onto Gibson's Way. And I think it's really important that we get that communication out early, just so, people aren't saying, my God, why is this happening? So I'll just leave it at that and allow the Director of Planning to proceed at this point.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I just wanted to flag some of the new items that are added here, and I welcome your prioritization because it is quite a lot of work for the planning department. So I do expect some of these projects to move to another year. The CAC policy review. So when council adopted that policy in November last year, you also passed a resolution to review it 1 year after it was adopted. So that is new. The $25,000 would be for the review of the policy and to recalculate those pro formas to see if the rates are still accurate. Another one that's new in here is 1.27, the garden suite policy update. So that's been a project that staff have been working on the side of our desks, and we just got inundated with development applications last year. And so we've put out a survey for that, a few surveys for that. We've received feedback, and now it's a matter of consolidating or reviewing all that feedback and providing a direction or a recommended direction for where to expand garden suites and Gibsons. And also looking at the development approvals process to make it more efficient and less costly for people to build garden suites. So that's a $15,000 ask. The housing strategy implementation, that's new. So that's $35,000, and that is, I put in here what the projects may include, but what I did here is I took some of the priorities from the housing strategy and got some quotes on some of the work to implement the housing strategy. So this is allocated for that, and depending on how council adopts the housing strategy or prioritizes, we could allocate the funds for the priorities there. Short-term rental bylaws, so that was from the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. So now it's in here. I should have had the council resolution in there, but I didn't. But anyway, that's the work that's ongoing right now. And then DPA 1, that was approved. DPA, and then DPA 2 was a new project. We put those two development permit area updates in a single RFP to try and make the money go further. So that's, as you know, we've gone back and forth on that work for a little bit, so the project hasn't started. But those are there. And then the scope of work for DPA 2 seems to be growing. So right now we've only got a $25,000 budget in there, but if the scope of work changes, we would be looking for an increase in budget. And that's it from planning. Thank you.
Any questions for the Director of Planning, Councillor D'Andretti?
I was actually, thanks, Director, because I was really concerned with the DPA 2. And the reason we are delaying it's to possibly make it better, but I was concerned with the funding, and I was concerned if the DPA 1 was going to be a different RFP, because I'm finding that 25 might not be enough. You know, if you look at any of the CAC update is already 30 and doesn't even include field work. So I was hoping that we have some flexibility. And then I was thinking the CAC, I know council passed a resolution, but it's for November. So if we extend over a year, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So perhaps, I don't know if the conversation here is enough or we have to pass a resolution. But I particularly am comfortable to move to 2023 because it's not going to be a major difference. If we do at the beginning of 2023, it will be basically irrelevant in terms of timing. But then we complete the DPA 2 in a manner that is appropriate and might even release. I see on the budget here over time the urban forest, and they're looking at biodiversity. I mean, a lot of some of this work will be done through the DPA 2, so we would have even some savings. So that's I'm not sure. Do we need a? No, we don't need a motion, right? We can just choose to do the CAC's move to 2023. Am I correct?
Over to you, Director of Infrastructure. If they want to cut a project or move it to a future year, is a resolution needed?
Nope.
Okay.
No, because there's no. So this is committee. So we're just in discussions, I'd let the Director of Finance tell you what the next steps are, but what we intend to do from this meeting is hear exactly that sort of thing, that we'll move that one to 2023, and then we will come back with a new list showing what the adjustments look like.
Deputy Clerk, can I just follow up on this one? The reason I mentioned this is because there is a resolution from Council to update the CAC in a year. That's why I was asking if we move to 2023. I understand that we are not making decisions at this meeting, but I'm saying if we will need another resolution or just to postpone a few months. I think that's my concern, just because there is a resolution from Council.
I think that we could probably tackle that
Mhm.
when the budget goes to council, and then we would, I wouldn't be able to speak to this, but Tracy or Rebecca, I suspect, could. And then there's a corporate officer with their hand up now.
I'll go to the corporate officer and then Councillor Ludwig.
You're on the right track there, Dave, in that when you go through the budget process, you can amend your resolution at that time. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Ludwig, thank you, corporate officer.
I guess back to my previous point, what I'm hoping comes out of this process after today is an annual work plan. I don't know if that's possible, and I don't know if I need to make a motion to see if council supports this idea, but I would like to have, out of today's conversation, I would like us to prioritize what projects we actually think will get accomplished this fiscal. And I would like to see project leads identified beside each project and FTEs associated with completing each one. So if one project takes 0.25 of an FTE, I'd like staff to estimate what they think that would require and put it next to each project. The reason I say this is because it is not clear to me, like even when I look at the pedestrian cycle links project, for example, I couldn't even capture them all because there's so many projects under that, but I was trying to capture them as Director of Infrastructure was saying all the different projects in there. I captured at least 6 projects. I don't know if we're planning on completing all 6 of those this year or not, but I mean, those 6 projects alone is almost between that and I don't know, pick one, GD decommissioning. Yeah, let's stick with those 2. Right there's almost a full-time job. So I'm just, I want to get really clear about who's responsible for completing what, how much time is required to complete it, and make sure that the projects that we prioritize are what staff or council wants to see completed this year.
Okay, Director Newman.
So the one side of the spreadsheet shows what department is responsible. So you got the spreadsheet, right? And so on the far left-hand side, it should say, on the far left-hand side, it should say,
yeah, okay.
So ISPW is Infrastructure Service Public Works, Parks, Eng is the inside staff, and so on and so forth. So you can then further on down, you can see a summary of who the total dollar value and the total number of projects. As far as getting FTEs to you, I wouldn't be able to give you something that detailed. We have discussions in-house. We look for synergies for us to be able to work with projects and get more than one done at the same time. We look at our staff availability. We balance the workload out between our group. So as I say, I wouldn't be able to give you FTEs, but we would be able to give you, these are the capital works that we can do. And so while some of these are giving you, in some instances, we are putting forward projects that you actually do need to choose because they're your priorities. And I think the Director of Planning was referring to that, it'll be challenging for her to get all her jobs done. What is your priority? And then we can adjust accordingly. And so there are 1 or 2 of those on ours as well. So let me finish this, the Word document. I'll bring the spreadsheet up on the screen. Already I've identified projects can be put off. I'll briefly tell you why they can be put off and what the implications are, and then have at her is what my thought is.
Okay.
Go back to my Word document.
Thank you, Director Newman.
Now, I've got Michelle here to talk urban forest. If you want more detail on that, you've seen the write-up that she has provided. I don't know if you have any questions in regards to that, or whether, because I know that urban forest has been an important priority for council. We've broken it up into 4 stages, and we've proposed those in different years based on the work that we can carry on. So I've got Michelle here. Perhaps she could briefly run through those 4 steps for you so that you are comfortable and confident on the work that is being done to further that important project.
Thank you, Director Newman. Please go ahead and welcome back, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So we're looking at this urban forest as, like David mentioned, in 4 steps. The first initial phase, which has already essentially been has begun, is the Inventorian Assessment. So this is through the LiDAR imagery that we captured last year, and some of the ortho imagery that has begun that work. We have the capabilities in-house to do an assessment based on that LiDAR imagery, dependent on what council objectives are for the urban forest plan. So one thing we can look at is canopy cover. We could look at canopy cover by zoning, looking at OCP projected zoning. And that would tell us essentially where we have areas where we could increase the canopy cover. But I believe that it's up to council, but I believe that we need to go further than just looking at canopy cover, and we need to be looking at forest health, and we need to look at visions and goals of the community as well. And so I've suggested here to start the Inventorian Assessment, which would be using analytical software programs and ground truthing, which could be an opportunity to have citizen scientists and stewardship groups involved to assist with the on-site measurements and ground truthing. Like Councillor D'Andrade had said earlier, that part of the biodiversity mapping, that's work that's already being completed by some stewardship groups as far as the Bear Alliance and looking at wildlife corridors and mapping. So that information can be gleaned to feed into this project as well. As far as wildfire risk, there's some work that the SCRD has presented, I believe, and then the 4th piece would be mapping out targets, priorities, and actions. So these are actionable items that we can look at as for the town moving forward to be able to essentially create metrics so we can understand how we're doing with these objectives. And if we set a canopy cover target of 35% or 40%, then how do we know if we're getting there? I would say, yeah, I'm open to any questions. I don't know if this is something that we discuss outside of this call, but yeah, please feel free to ask.
Councillor D'Andrade.
It's a comment. I look forward to returning to the activities of the tree committee, because a lot of this has been discussed there. And I think it's very important, like Michelle has said, what's the objectives, right? And zone is very important because some zones you can have 100% canopy cover in a park, for example. So you can always target some reforestation if you like, and other zones, you can have less or more. But I think this is really important. I think my concern is we are pushing for this densification, which is understandable. I'm not against, but we have to bear in mind that when we densify, we have less opportunity for trees. So what's the plan? I know one of the things we discussed in the committee is, can we do street planting? And I really look forward to a possibility, right? Because the street planting will still get the cover, but it won't be in someone's house. So, Yeah, I think I get very excited with the possibility because this is all coming together and one thing cannot be done without the other. Otherwise, it's a waste of resource or you don't get all the important value. So I think this should be a discussion. And I look for, even with GPA too, how can incorporate already this knowledge that has been collected, right? Because that's the GPA 2 is also to understand environmental values of the area.
If we can move on, Councillor Dendretti, we'll go back to unless there are any more questions of Michelle. Yeah, I would like to just sort of, if we can, stay with respect to the budget issues and, you know, the projects we can deal with and sort of not get into specific nuts and bolts of the individual projects. If, you know, unless it's budget related, if that's okay. If I can go back, any more questions of Michelle? Director Newman.
It's not a question for Michelle. With your permission, I'm going to share my screen and we'll bring the spreadsheet up on screen and we can, well, you guys can lead the discussion on those priorities. And so I should have permissions here. Okay, so can everybody see the spreadsheet up there?
Not yet.
Hopefully soon. Can you see anything?
There it is.
A long way from Victoria. Okay, so here's the list that we had talked about, your budget amounts, and then the first column is your taxation column. And so in a way, that's the one you have to watch because that's the one that's going to give you your impact on your tax rates this year. Really quickly, the yellow ones are ones that I feel could be put off. The sidewalk projects and tree replacement, if we put that off, there are some ongoing maintenance that we need to do on the sidewalk panels to keep the tripping hazard down. That's why it is in an A, is because it's a safety item. But we could do our grinding on that for another year. You mentioned the active annual transportation improvements. That could potentially be put off for a year. The Beachcomber culvert, that one has been there for a while, and we could continue with the design work, but that one could drop off for a year. We have annual drainage improvements. That one is a budget that we use just to do kind of one-offs that come up during the year. We've got the dog park fencing, construction and consult, pickleball, Glassford traffic calming. So that one, again, you'll get a background on this when I talk about Glassford. All I did on that one was put the next lowest option for traffic calming on Glassford should council vote to remove the trial closure and install some traffic calming. As I say, I just picked the lowest cost item, and in the report we'll be able to see some of those other options as well. So those are the ones that we could easily pull. Some of them are taxation, and I have no shortage of, like, if I was sitting twiddling my thumbs, I have no shortage of policies and bylaws to work on. And so if you were concerned about the level of service that we're delivering to the development community, from my end, those are some projects that could drop off. And then I understand from Leslie Ann that there will be some projects that she would also choose to drop off.
Are there any questions with respect to these projects that Director Newman's highlighted? Okay. back to you, Director Newman.
And right back at you. Any discussion on these projects? I don't know how you want to go through them one by one, or maybe each councillor identifies the ones that they specifically want to see happen this year, or they would be okay with putting them off until 2023.
Well, I think you've indicated the ones, you know, that we're committed to or in progress. So the next thing would be is what does council see that they would like to see dealt with? Councillor Ludwig.
So why don't we scroll up to the top and just start there?
I'm at the top, aren't I?
Are you? I thought I saw that the pedestrian links was the first one.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's start with that one because it's a big one. Are you proposing to spend all those funds and complete all those projects this year?
Yeah, we've got until March of 2023. So the answer is yes. We've applied for this grant. We don't spend it,
You lose it.
black mark. So it's kind of almost a no choice as far as staff goes.
Right, okay. So that's actually 6 projects at least.
Yes, but they vary. They just vary in size is all.
I know, but still it's every project is work and commitment.
Yep. Yep. Well, although some of them, as I say, we are combining with other work. So for instance, the work on Venture, that's getting combined with a water main replacement.
Okay, so I can, if it's okay, I'll just quickly, I can identify the things that I would like to see completed this year. I might as well take a crack at it. Is that okay, Deputy Mayor?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, because some of them aren't even on here. So after receiving at least 4 letters of support and requests for an active transportation plan, I would like to see us complete an active transportation plan this year.
That one's currently in 2023.
Okay, so
and I would have to speak to Leslie, or you would, I suppose. She's the appropriate staff member to talk about that one.
okay.
And I don't know whether you want to just list them off, or and then talk to staff about it, or how you want to handle that.
Okay, why don't I just quickly walk through them because there's not really that many, and then sure we can hear from Director Planning. So an active transportation plan. I would like to see a tree planting plan before we start spending the money that we're getting from the tree bylaw and planting. So I would like to see a tree planting plan / map. I think we're long overdue for a natural assets management plan. I'm still stunned that our community actually doesn't have one, considering all the accolades we've gotten internationally for our work on this. I think having an actual plan would be a good start. And if we had that, then all these things like an urban forest, stream restoration, shoreline restoration, shoreline eelgrass, like it would all be nestled under our natural assets management plan. And I really think it's about time we actually had a plan that we could hold up and be proud of. Obviously, if we have to spend the money for the pedestrian cycle links this fiscal or we lose it, then that would be a high priority. The White Tower Pond project, is that again funds that have to be spent this year? Okay, so then obviously that's a high priority. I mean, these are big projects, and I think like I really would like to see this list shrink because I just don't see how we're going to complete this huge list with all these big projects on it. Gooseberry Creek, that's another large project that we've now gotten funding for. I take it, does that have to be spent this year?
No, Gooseberry Creek we have not received funding for yet.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, so okay, I'll move that one aside. Then other than that, and this is me personally, obviously other councillors can have their own views. I really want to see this work, the monitoring and study done for the Chester Creek tributary and our upper water stormwater plan and what's going on with that. We've had years of complaints on that file, and I think it's about time we addressed it. The Gibsons pool multi-purpose room project, you've got it identified as engineering or something. I would prefer to relabel it myself as the project design and costs, but I would like to see that done. That funding has been sitting in that reserve fund for over 20 years, and I think it's just about time that council of the day actually makes some progress on that project. And then obviously we've committed to DEU decommissioning, so there's, we obviously have to carry on with that. From a planning perspective, so that's capital projects. I guess maybe you said that some of them, like my tree one, and maybe some of those are planning, but from a planning perspective, I'd like us to complete the housing strategy. I assume Councillor DeAndrade is going to want to see DPA 1 and 2. And then one that is not on here that I kind of asked for earlier in the year, but it's been kind of missed, is I would really like us to do a review of the development application forms that we have and I think it's almost a project for Elizabeth maybe, and with combination with other staff. I really feel that as an applicant, myself having tried to walk through, say, a subdivision application, even building permit applications, I just feel like we could really benefit by having an information sheet and a better application process. I think we could save ourselves a lot of hassle and time and complaints from the community if we just put a hat on and pretended we were applicants and actually tried to walk through our application processes, because I think there's a lot of conflict that's being created because our applications need improvement. That's it. I'll stop there.
I believe Councillor Lumley had his hand up before we go to Councillor DeAndrade.
Yeah, are we going through each one of these items, each of us, or is that just what you think?
Just projects that you would like to see come to fruition. And then between what you want to see, what other councillors have indicated, what we have to do, hopefully we can weed this list down a bit.
Okay. I keep trying to scroll on David's screen sharing thing and expand it, and it's never working.
Do you want a moment to sort of think about it?
Yeah.
I'll go to Councillor DeAndrade.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crow. Yeah, I obviously, what Councillor Ledwig, I think it makes sense. GPA 2, yes, it is my priority. Also, I would like, because, oh, okay, now I have to look at my list. Sorry, the C2 source. Where is this? Oh, here. I would like the CAO to comment on this project, because this is ongoing. My understanding is it's still 63,000. I thought that the project was basically complete, so I would like to understand where we are. And obviously, the urban forest assessment, I think this is all a continuation. We cannot just afford not to do it, but I'm not sure in terms of the progression of source to sea. Is it done? Is it the urban forest? If the CEO could elaborate a little bit on that, please.
Or Michelle.
Yeah, sorry, or Michelle. Yes.
Who would like to respond to that?
Yeah, can I ask Michelle just to give us an update? For the last year, Michelle has really led that.
Yeah.
I don't to say we certainly have more work there to do, but
Go ahead, please, Michelle.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We are still in phase 2 of the Source to Sea project. It's a 3-phase project. Dave has it in here. And that is all grant funded as well. So that's a project that will continue. Pardon me. So where we're at right now is we have created the dashboard, which has the condition assessment. That's something, if you're interested, that I could walk you through at some point. But we're waiting for, at this point, we're waiting on the stage data from all the creek monitoring that we've been doing since last July. So we need to have 14 readings to develop a flow rating curve. And so we've been going out, I think we've gone out 8 times already, or 10 times. So we've got a few more to collect. And then once that's developed, then that data would be input into the modeling that we're looking at for looking at the creeks. And so after that, because if we don't have that data in place when they try to calibrate the model, then where it's not, it's only models are only as good as the data that you're providing them with. And so after that, then we'll be identifying the scenarios, like honing in on the scenarios that we want to model as far as climate change impacts or deforestation, et cetera, and then running the model to look at the impacts of those. So phase 3 is expected to be complete. I believe it's later this year, but I would have to double check on the numbers or on the dates on that.
Okay, any follow-up, Councillor D'Andretti?
Yes, and the urban forest assessment. Because my understanding my understanding, because one of the things also, since the start of our mandate, I think one of the things that came across was Charman land, the protection of this land. And I know right now it is protected to a certain extent, but it was more designating as a park. But I understand that there's some pending, at least my understanding, at least that was the suggestion that our CAO gave, that we wait for the results of the C2 source so we can better understand. So how this is tied up and with the urban forest assessment, because at the time, the Charman land was going to have an assessment, but then the source to see became this bigger project that would include the assessment of Charman land.
CAO, did you care to respond to that?
That latter part, I believe we had an assessment done on Charman from Dave Bates. In some way, what I wanted to add to what Michelle has mentioned is related to also the suggestion from Councillor Ludwig around having a plan specific for natural assets. The process that we're following, although we're calling it coastal valuation and source to sea and so on, it follows a methodology on the asset management continuum that there's basically 6 different steps that we go through. Is what you own, what condition it's under, well, what is your financial plan, your management plan, and your monitoring. And so at the moment we're figuring out what's important, which is we've said is within the watershed. We're getting more information around the condition assessment. We've got some on trees, and we've got a little bit more monitoring data coming from the creeks. But within the next few weeks or months, once we get that information, we'll have a really good picture. And you can't really go on to either restoration projects or ongoing maintenance until you have a good sense of the condition. And that also will address which trees to put where. And I would suggest that you likely will see a hierarchy of places like Pebbles Beach, where we've got slopes that are sliding and so on. They're probably higher candidates for tree planting than a street boulevard and so on. So we're sort of on step 4 or 5 of 6 or 7 steps that we typically follow, but we need to capture that. That all gets captured, by the way, in our asset management strategy and the plan. Not so much a plan, but process that Graceland then manages through that software. So it's a work in progress, but we'll have a lot more clarity and in short time, I hope.
Councillor Ludwig and then Director Newman.
I just want to say that I loved everything that CAO just said right there. That's great. I just want to see that in a plan, in a document, that like the 6 steps you described. Like right now I'm on our website, natural assets management. We've got art projects, coastal resiliency project, Gibson's journey, whatever that is, integrated stormwater management plan, key resources, healthy harbor project, source to sea project, Charman Creek assessment, tree preservation bylaw, or them. It's just like, I would like an overarching plan that says, this is what natural asset management means to Gibsons. And here are all the components. Here's the 6-step plan that you've just described or what have you. Here's all the components that make up natural assets management. And here's all the subcomponents of all the work we're doing to fulfill our plan. That to me is the overarching planning piece that we're missing. Just like I felt that about our affordable housing strategy, which we are now completing thanks to the Director of Planning. And I also feel about our transportation. We're doing all sorts of great work for active transportation, but we don't have this overarching plan that really speaks to what our goals and objectives are for active transportation. We got all sorts of work going on, but is our priority tourists? Is our priority children going to school? Is it all of the above? Is it active transportation for all ages? Like these kind of overarching document pieces, I really feel is what kind of gets us into knots sometimes with the community. And if we had them, then it would really help us in our rollout of these projects more effectively.
Did you have follow-up there, CAO, or?
I know I agree with that, and it's certainly helpful clarity, and we can work on that.
Director Newman.
Yeah, just a couple other points in regards to that. We've got a lot of projects on this list that we are using to gather that information. Also there is with, for example, we tend not to look at drainage differently from a pipe system versus a natural system. It's part of our drainage system. And so it becomes part of our drainage asset management plan. And I do believe I hear what you're saying, that and if I could reiterate it just to make sure that I do have it, is that we've got those 6 steps, and what you would like to see in each one of those 6 steps is things that are currently underway in order to answer those questions. That's not exactly an asset management plan, but it provides a roadmap of how we are getting there. Because one of the things that they say if you end up in an asset management course is you don't need to wait until you've got 100% of one of those steps done before you develop an asset management plan. You've got 80% of the inventory. One of the to-dos thing is to get the other remaining 20%, but it doesn't mean that you wait on a plan until you got 100% of everything. And so I can see, although I wouldn't necessarily call it an asset management plan, a roadmap of how we're going to get there. I saw Michelle come online there. I have a feeling she may want to mention something because she is actively working on some of those components as well. And then when Michelle is done, Grace may have something to add, as long as we're not taking up too much time.
Michelle, I'll go to you, and then Councillor Lumley still has his hand up after Michelle.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Ladwig, I appreciate your comments. This is something that staff is actively working towards, and I agree that an overarching plan is needed. It's very complex, natural assets and all the systems that are connected, and all of the projects that Dave has mentioned that would fall under the natural asset umbrella, they all speak to each other and they all feed into each other. And so it's a slow process as far as, when we're looking at the Source to Sea project, we have to wait for some data to inform that. And then that project is going to inform something else. But it's all connected. And I agree that is what we're working towards, to have an overarching framework that we're working under.
Okay. I'll go to Councillor Lumley and then Graceland, if that's okay.
Is that okay? Are you okay with that, Graceland? All right, silence means yes. Couple things I'm pretty, as much as I mean, we've been talking kind of around larger issues, but a couple specific issues for me. Well, one, I guess 2 of these things on the budget cover one, which is a growing homeless community. And it's only going to get worse here. So I'm not sure entirely what everyone needs a home that $126,000 is comprised of. But I don't think if the town doesn't have a plan to address homelessness, or at least on a path to a plan, I think we're going to get caught. So I think that should be a priority. And then, of course, coupled with that is the old Visitors Information Center. I mean, it's been hanging around forever now. Clearly, the homelessness and that collide because half the homeless people are down there drinking beer every day. So I'd like to see that get cleaned up. And I don't know if I'm going to try and, I don't know if you can see that. Can you guys see that? That was like last week. Can you make out what that is? That's a cart. And these two people, yes, these two people are living in it, right? And they were moving it fast. Yeah, and that's the right in front of Smitty's, and they were just moving down the path. So I increasingly see this, and I think the town has to be responsible, and some have a plan, or at least, and I'm assuming that's what everybody needs. A home comes in, they can help the town with this, I would imagine. I know Silas has been doing some cleanup work and arriving on scenes last minute and doing some, emergency, work himself. But I'd like to see us put a plan together and make sure that we can at least respond, or at least be able to help anyone. Or as the homelessness grows, I think everybody's, should be concerned. They're going to know it is, because the prices of everything are going up so fast. There's no accommodation. So I would like to see us put that on the budget for sure. Thank you.
If I can just jump in briefly before we go to Graceland, with respect to the work that Silas White's doing, that was done, it's being done under grant money, and there is concern that we're going to run out of funding. So I think I agree with you, Councillor Lumley, that we need to be able to continue that work, because the work Silas has done has saved a lot of people a lot of grief. And if that work suddenly stops, it's going to create huge other problems. With respect to the tourist information, there is a piece coming forward to council with respect to the Pioneer Square and funding that may be available through tourism restoration and First Nations. So to be continued there, but definitely I think we need to highlight the homeless issue and funding for the work continued funding for the work Silas is doing. And currently, other than it, being there as everyone needs a home, there's no provision for increased funding there. And having said that, I will turn it over to Graceland.
Just in regards to, thank you, Deputy Mayor, just in regards to Councillor Ladwig's request for a natural asset management plan, I do think that the staff have spoken to it, and I can just support it, that we do have a lot of information. It's ready to come together. And I appreciate you putting it on our radar as one of your priorities. There's a lot of asset management knowledge, and through Dave and Michelle and Manny and Tyler and the foreman, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come together and seeing it presented. Thank you.
Councillor Dendretti.
Thank you. Is a clarification. My understanding is all the project in A it's a priority, unless we say it's not, but we won't say that. So my understanding is for the everyone needs a home, there is a funding for this year. So are we talking about what Councillor Lumley is saying? What's our situation? I understand that we may run out of money because this is a grant, but are we talking about working on a funding for 23? Because my understanding looking at this chart is we have $126,000 for this project, or this is insufficient.
Perhaps the director of my understanding is the 120,000 that we received was a grant. Silas White, in the role that he's performing, and some of that funding was turned over to the Deer Park for the work they're doing to destigmatize homeless people. So perhaps the director of finance can give us status on how much of that funding is still available. Director of Finance.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, so the 126,000 is the remaining part. So the original grant was for $190,000. Part of it was spent in 2021, and the 126 is the remaining that will be spent in 2022. As I understand it, though, there is potentially going to be a second intake of that Strengthening Communities grant, and I believe our CEO, or there have been discussions at the admin level in terms of potentially extending the work that is being done under the Everyone Needs a Home project and looking for additional funding. So that is on staff's radar. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any follow-up, Councillor Dendretti?
No, it's just a clarification, because when we look at the budget, it's 126. So is it insufficient? It's just the point that Councillor Lumley, I know he has been concerns about that, but I just, are we talking about we need to be working on a grant for next year, or a solution, or we need more money this year? So that's, to me, it's a little bit unclear with the comment that this is a priority, because to me, when I look at, that's why I didn't make a comment, because this money is there for this work. But if that's the kind of clarification that would be valuable.
Okay. Just a suggestion and partly a question here. I don't know when the project started last year, but we've obviously gone through almost $70,000. If the remaining 125 gets us through 2022, I'm wondering whether we put that down as an E project, one that we're seeking grant monies for, and then should we not be successful during 2022, then council can consider that rolling into tax funded or otherwise funded project for 2023. Would that meet your needs?
I think we should certainly make that recommendation that we keep close tabs on how the resource is being used this year. And as indicated by the Director of Finance, there seems to be a potential for grant funding, which we should obviously definitely apply for, and if not, make provision for taxation or funding from reserves to cover it. And I would look for direction from council to follow up with that. Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, I'm just saying it should be prioritized, because it was like when we put hospice on our budget. I think we agreed that it was it was not being funded. There's a need for it in our community, so we decided to step up and fund it. That's all I'm asking for. I'm just saying that this is definitely a need. It's not going to get any better without our help. It's only going to get worse. And I don't know if you've been in. I've been having to go to Vancouver quite often lately for business, and a couple times I've driven up Maine and Hastings area, and it is like a complete and utter gong show up there. It is, you wouldn't even believe it. If you haven't been down there in a while, it would blow your mind to see the streets there. Like this is, and it's not going to get any better. So that was all. I just wanted to prioritize it like we have with some other things that aren't going to get funded.
At this point, if I may, because we're at 4:33 and we still have two more items on this agenda, I think the direction that's come from council so far is individuals have highlighted their priorities. What I'd like to see come back to council is these priorities, along with the projects that we're committed to and that we need to do, and then how that's going to, and sort of, in the effort to try and take some of the workload off staff, if council is in agreement that we go along that line, that council priorities, staff, what they're indicating needs to be done, that we're committed to, and work in progress. And then we sort of revisit this, and hopefully, it'll work better for everyone. Councillor Dendretti, and then Director Newman.
Thank you. I just would like to include, because the town creeks monitoring at 16,000 was not highlighted. And I cannot see this is not a priority. This is part of the, unless this is extra monitoring, but I think it is, yeah, under drainage.
It's important, Town Creek monitoring. It's not to do with the Chester one, but still, we do consider that one.
Yeah, but yeah, it's about understanding the resilience of our forest. So this has to keep going. We cannot, yeah. Thank you.
Something else I would add to that, Director Newman, is if there are projects that sort of interface with other projects, that there's economies of scale
Absolutely.
in doing them together, I would certainly appreciate you highlighting that when this comes back to council. Director Ludd, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
The one counselor I haven't heard from as far as priorities is you, Councillor Crowell.
I'm very much in agreement with what the direction that's being led so far. There's a number of projects that you're indicated that are important that we need to proceed with. So, I'm just going to sort of go with the flow at this point. And obviously we should probably, on the return of Mayor Beamish, seek his input, because I'm sure he'll have some issues as well. Councillor Ladwig.
I'm just going to make a plug for the third time. It's really important to me that we identify project leads for all these projects if we're going to develop a work plan of some sort. Since, we've now got our great new maintenance and operations manager. We've got a natural assets manager. We've got our capital projects manager. We've got a planner 1. We've got a planner 2. We've got, of course, our directors of infrastructure and planning. I'd really like to just see those titles down these project names, just so it doesn't mean that there won't be synergies and whatnot crossing over, but I would like to see leads for all of these projects so that we get a sense of what everybody's kind of working on. For me, that would give me a sense.
Just make a motion.
Okay, I'm making a motion that I would like to see project leads identified on our capital projects work.
I'm going to allow Director Newman to reply before we proceed with that motion, Councillor Ladwig. Director Newman.
Yeah, so this is kind of starting to venture into how we're allocating our staff, especially when we have sometimes moving targets. We have vacations, we have illness, etc. So what you've got is the lead on overseeing the allocation of projects is the manager of each one of those departments. I would hesitate to start identifying who will and won't be doing some projects because 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road, when something changes, that's all going to change. So it's not something that is going to produce any long-term value, because what we're constantly doing in our department is making sure that everyone is equally over busy as everybody else. And so it's not unusual for the capital project coordinator to say, Dave, can you take that? And I'll flop something over to Marcy, or Michelle will pick up something. So it's very organic. So honestly, when we could do that, all it would be at this point is our vague ideas, but I certainly wouldn't be sticking to it. So I think that, as I say, I suppose what I could feel I could commit to is that department head is going to make sure that in their department, those projects are going to be done. Now, having said that, we do always, once we've allocated a project, we do always identify a project lead for the benefit of the public. But at this stage, before budget approval, I don't feel like I'm in a position to do that. I see that Manny's got his hand up.
I was going to go to the CAO and then follow up with Councillor Ladwig. CAO, Michelle.
I think through you, Mr. Mayor, we can do that. I think we would probably wait until we have a more realistic list of what that's going to look like. And part of our, I think, implementation strategy identify who's going to be leading this project. And I think for our next meeting, it probably be a bit too early, but we have plans ourselves for each department that these will get translated from here. But there's no harm in identifying that here's what got approved, who's going to lead it, what department, what persons. That's not difficult for us to do. Just in short notice, not even a question of short notice. I think it might be a bit too early, but that's an important element. We do that you're asking, although we're not necessarily putting it out there. Each department has lists, and we bounce things around, as they were saying, between planning and other departments. But we can do that once we have a completed list of projects. Identify that on top of the department. We can put a person's name next to it.
Okay.
Are you happy, Councillor Ludwig, in waiting until we have a finalized list before proceeding with that motion?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just sort of a comfort thing. You know, if I saw one person's name next to 15 projects, I'd go, whoa, maybe we need to rethink this and shave back a bit more. But I'll leave it for now then.
Okay.
But I would appreciate that, CAO, if we could get that list once this all unfolds. Maybe at that point, you know, there's always adjustments as we go along. Maybe then, if necessary, adjustments could be made.
Councillor Dundretti?
Thank you. At the beginning of the conversation, Councillor Ludwig mentioned about work plans, and now was a motion. Well, I know there's no, I think you're backing up your motion, just to put a name. Do we need a motion for the work plan? I think that was overall, because in a work plan, you identify the lead regardless, right? So are we going back to the idea of have a work plan that we identify or this is something that we don't need a motion, the staff is gonna, because the idea was valuable and was a good discussion around that.
If I may, Ms. Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
There's no harm in passing a motion. In fact, you know, feel free to do that. We will. We hear you either way, and we do have department work plans that we meet regularly. I meet with department heads every few weeks on where things are at, what's falling behind. And I admit that the last year has been more challenging than most, but on a regular basis we have that, and we adjust that every few weeks. You know, things happen, the priorities come forward, whether it's development related or capital projects or other matters. But we see the intent, and it's important for, you know, the distribution of the workload, as they've mentioned, but also get a sense of all that is left to do, which is quite considerable.
Mhm.
Director Newman.
One little bit of information that would be helpful, well, actually two little bits. One, we've got these planning projects here. Are there any besides the community, come on, don't do this to me, there we go. Besides the community policy, CAC policy review, which was suggested to bump off to 2023. Are there any of these that you would either like to see off 2023 or definitely 2022? They're not an option.
I'm going to throw my 2 cents in there. The only one that I really want to see move forward is the short-term rental. Councillor Ludwig?
The only ones that I want to see on there, I actually missed that short-term rental, so thank you, Deputy Mayor, is the housing strategy. The housing strategy, making sure we get that complete, and the short-term rental. And then the other things that I mentioned earlier, like the active transportation plan. And I do still want to see all the ones I mentioned earlier, which is the natural assets management plan and a tree planting plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor, sorry, Director Newman.
those won't necessarily be budget items, but we can certainly make note of that. What was it? Oh, I suppose just the only question I would have at this in regards to the active transportation plan, which is budgeted for in 2023, is maybe just confirmation from the director of planning that there's no work planned in 2022 that was going to feed into that or something like that, and that she has the ability to do that.
No, so active transportation planning wasn't on my work plan for 2022. So if it moves on to my work plan, then we'll have to move something off of it.
Can you get back to us on how that might impact? Like what?
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of your question about the economy of scale, I think DPA 1 and 2, those two, the money could go farther if they're grouped together, but they could bump. I mean, it's all so important. So I don't envy you. It's such a hard decisions to make. Short-term rentals were more than halfway through that, so that I'd recommend keeping. Housing strategy implementation. So what that is it's assuming the housing strategy does get to completion. That budget is for the implementation of some of the priorities in the housing strategy. So if you wanted to bump the implementation of the housing strategy and replace that with active transportation, that could be something. The garden suite policy, again, it is also part of the housing strategy implementation, but that's well underway. CAC policy review, I agree that could get bumped to next year. So those are my comments there.
Okay. Councillor Danvetti.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to mention about the CAC policy because it's still highlighted here. I don't think there's any harm in bumping to 23, but I would like just to better understand the track plan. What my understanding is we would apply for the funding, right? Because the grant application has started. And then once we receive the funding, I don't know when the funding will be available, could be at the very end of the year. So is it the case, perhaps Director of Planning, would it make sense? Is it the funding that we are after? Because we can get up to 50%, which is up to $25,000.
I don't know the application that you're talking about. I haven't read the what's required in the application, but if it's 50%, if we get 50% back, then we would have to allocate 50% of the funds to write the application and match it.
Mm-hmm. So
follow up.
Deputy Crow, do we need to make a motion for, perhaps that staff look at the grant, because the grant, I mean, you can go on the, just Google, I just look at today, it is open for, the applications are open. Obviously, I didn't look at all the criteria, but I'm sure one of the criteria is if your plan is outdated and ours are. And so I think this is really important. And I would like staff to pursue that. So do we need a motion for that?
We would need a motion for that. And also I would like to know from staff, because we've already highlighted the fact we're sending staff writing out, spending time writing grant applications, and we're trying to reduce their workload. So, Councillor Ladwig.
Agreed, but that's part of this prioritization exercise. Like, are we cutting? So I would rather cut housing strategy implementation, and so are we going to move forward with this climate resiliency strategy, or is that? And are we moving forward with that one too? And the garden suite policy, like let's highlight right now the ones we want to see done, and cut the rest. So
the yellow are ones that are perhaps not getting cut, but are getting bumped by a year.
Right, okay.
So the bright yellow ones are the ones that are going.
Okay, so I would support bumping for now, the implementation for the housing strategy. I want to get the policies in place first so that we can start avoiding some of the consultation challenges we've been having.
CAO.
And I think we can delay the garden suite policy too for the time being. What's the community energy emissions plan?
I think
You, Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
that's the regional plan for energy and emissions. We get that data from the province on. It's outside of municipal operations. That's our corporate plan. Everything else, the households and industry and business, the emissions that are out, that are source that come from those types of activities, they are covered in a separate plan. It's the community. The last one was done in 2011, and it hasn't really received an update. So the regional district is leading some of that work, and it's more of a information update. The transportation plan, the regional transportation plan, it's probably the most, and the work on the waste management are probably the two regional ones that have the most. The other pieces, like building efficiencies and so on our bylaw, that's done. The corporate plan that says there, the resilience plan, that is a combination of emissions reductions. Those are energy emissions for town-owned buildings and infrastructure, our fuel use and so on. But also part of that is the resilience side, is how are we adapting, and it will capture that strategy that you're talking about from asset management strategy. All of that work would fall under that resilience work, because that's about increasing our climate resilience.
So would it be possible then to suggest that, so is this a regulatory requirement that we report out on this community energy emissions plan?
The part of, yes and no. It's not, it's for us, we're required to report more on our own emissions as far as the corporate ones, which we do every year, because we get our GST back. There's a program called CAREP, Community Incentive Revenue Program, Community Climate Action Revenue Program. So we get some money there. The other one, I mean, if we don't do it this year, personally, I don't think we're gonna miss much. And by the time probably next year, it might be more appropriate to do that, the SEEP aspect of it.
Okay. Things just moved around, so now I don't know.
Lost it there. Oh, there we go.
Okay, like I would rather, well, it's just me, but I would rather that. So now we're down to, so the yellow is proposed to go.
Yellow's gone, or getting bumped a year. The orange, well, the other colors are just color coded according to different councilors' goals. But so the colored ones are definitely, you want to do those this year, or get started on them, or what have you.
Okay, so then do we, like Councillor DeAndrade said, do we need to make a motion to develop an active transportation plan?
No, because that will be, that we will pull that over from 2023 and put it in 2022, and we'll come back with you and present committee, not council, because all you're doing is making recommendations at this point. So we'll come back with a revised list. You give us a thumbs up and say, yeah, you nailed it. And then it goes to council for final approval. And so that will be all the changes that we've made, but no resolution is required at this point.
Okay.
So it will come back to committee.
Okay. So then my last question is, what about this concept I keep pushing for, this natural assets management plan? I know we've talked about it a lot, but where are we sitting on that? I know people are doing lots of work on it. Are we going to develop an overarching plan? I know I keep hearing that we're doing all this work that's going to feed into it, but
what we can do is
3 years of being on council, and I couldn't even tell somebody what natural assets management meant. So I mean, this is a problem.
So we can set out those 6 steps. This would be just on the staff level. We would set out the 6 steps of collecting, your inventory, the condition, etc. And then on each one of those, we would say what steps are required, and we can show which ones we've done or are underway. And so when you gather all that information or enough information on those questions, you know, your financial plan, etc., then that's what forms your asset management plan. Without
you'd have a narrative that explains what it is and
Yep.
and what elements are within, like what natural assets are within our plan. Like, does that include wildlife? Does it not? Yeah, probably, you know, like you'd give a narrative explaining the whole process, maybe a nice cover page. Okay.
Okay,
Michelle,
I'm going to
there you
go
go.
to Michelle Lewis, if I may, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Ladwig, I understand what you're saying about that it's been on there for 3 years, and you know you have a hard time even explaining what that might look like. And it's even being in this role, there is no framework that exists currently anywhere to be able to put natural assets through an asset management framework. So we're blazing a trail here by doing this. So it is quite time consuming to put all these pieces together. But I think I mentioned earlier that Dave and I have discussed this, and we're working on, you know, kind of a document that shows all of how everything is going to fit together. And I think that's what Dave is speaking to at this point too.
Okay. At this point, I'm hoping we've got enough information that the Director of Infrastructure and Planning and our respective managers can come back to us with a revised budget for 22 and sort of a revised 5-year plan. Because we still do have 2 items on this agenda, and one of them we definitely have to deal with because it's the restructuring of or rescheduling the meeting for Stonehurst. So Director Newman and then Councillor Dendretti.
Okay, so just one last question about these prioritizations. So we've got enough information to come back to you with. These 4, I said that they could get bumped off. However, I don't know if these 4 are particularly priorities of council. And so they're the dog park fencing, and we've got $45,000 total for that. And so there's a consultation and possibly construction of that. We've got pickleball court design and consultation. That will be kind of identifying the location for one of these, and then construction could potentially be in a following year. Glassford traffic calming, as mentioned, that was the next cheapest method of traffic calming. It does not have to be that one, but without direction, that was what I did. And then the stair construction, which is a fairly high priority. It would be an A if we had the money. So I don't know if any of those 3 or 4 you wish to trump what I'm saying.
I'm just going to interject there because I know the dog park and the pickleball are items that Mayor Beamish has raised on several occasions. So I am not going to be the one to bump those.
I will.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley. I would leave those for the moment, Director Newman, until we've had consultation with Mayor Beamish. In all fairness to him in his absence. Councillor Dendretti.
Thank you. I was going to say this, to put in another caller to be continued because Mayor Beamish is not here. Plus, we have. I know Glassford traffic calming is an important issue. So to make a decision now, we have a meeting. We're gonna hear from the community. So why don't we put this in a different color, like to be continued, and then we would have some understanding for the next agenda item, and then Mayor Beamish will be present and we can.
I would recommend at this point we leave those items in the 22 year 22 budget until we've had input from Mayor Beamish. And with respect to Glassford, we've still got 120 pages of agenda to deal with on that subject.
Okay, I feel like we've got enough to go on. Director of Finance, I'm not sure if you want to pipe up or have any thoughts or concerns.
Director of Finance, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that. So what the next steps are that Dave and I will go away and incorporate and revise the list based on the feedback that we received today. And we'll also be checking with other department heads and directors as well. We'll bring back a report. The next meeting is March 22nd in the afternoon, Committee of the Whole, and that will bring back a revised project list for ideally final direction from council in terms of where you want to move next steps. And then that evening is the budget dialogue where council will receive some feedback, and that will keep us on track. So hopefully that timing works for council as well. Thank you.
Okay, I think you've covered it. It was a bit of an audio issue there, but as long as we've got the priorities indicated by council, we have input from the mayor and the department heads with respect to the projects that we definitely need to proceed with. And we'll look forward to seeing your updated revised list on the 22nd. If everyone's in agreement. Okay. Can we move on to, it's the Director of Infrastructure with the Glassford Road traffic counts and next steps.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to hit save on this and close her out. Sorry, it's just being a little bit slow. I might go without my video just to see if that improves my performance, so to speak.
Okay, and if I can sort of jump in before you get too far with this, because we've had quite a bit of community feedback on this closure. You've got a lot of information before us. I'm feeling that and it's been difficult because of COVID and one thing and another, Zoom meetings versus meetings in public. But I'm just wondering if we're able to take the information you have, Director Newman, the feedback we've been getting from the public, and come up with a Reader's Digest condensed version moving forward that is going to cover a lot of bases without having to go through 110 pages of material. And I'll leave it to you to answer that question.
I would suggest that I've got the summary there that I'll go through.
Okay.
And then a couple other items. I'm not planning on going through the attachments.
Okay.
That's totally up to you. I know that it was a high interest and so I was just putting the relevant pieces of information in there for your benefit and nighttime reading. So I'm not intending to go over the whole report exhaustively. I'm trying to just pull out the significant pieces in it.
Okay, thank you. So
I'm game to keep my contribution short.
thank you, sir. So go ahead, please.
Bothering me how often council feels like you need to tell me to be quiet. But anyway,
No, it's
I won't take it personally.
okay.
Okie dokie. So the background council meeting back in July made some resolutions. Two of them were unable to be completed due to staffing issues. One was the shoulder improvements on the east side of Garrow Point Road. I think that would have been good to have done ahead of time, but we just did not have the time to be able to get that done. I would definitely recommend that if the likely depending on what happens to Glassford, that those shoulder improvements would be good to do almost regardless. There was a request to report every 2 months, which we just did not manage to achieve. So I think there's a few bits and pieces of key information about what we've got right now. one of them is that drivers will drive according to the conditions of the road, not the posted speed limit. And so, you know, you've got with Glassford Road, you've got a nice, wide, great visibility, smooth road, dead straight. And the bonus is it cuts off a corner off the collector road on Gower Point. So it will not, posting up 30 kilometer or any other speed besides 50 is not going to have much of a desired effect. In contrast, and we'll see this in a minute as well, the Gower Point Road doesn't meet those same criteria. It's more a little bit more winding. The road certainly isn't as smooth, so you don't have as clear visibility, and drivers are, well, for starters, they gravitate towards to Glassford Road. You're familiar with where the barricades went. There is all sorts of different pieces in the official community plan in regards to pedestrian and cycle routes. Now, Glassford, as well as being a location of interest for traffic calming, that is also supposed to be friendly for pedestrians and cyclists. Now, one of the things that we as staff are very aware of, and council as well, is that we don't have a lot of meat on the bones when we've finished doing the or budgeting for the projects that are important to move forward. And so whenever we can take a step towards something, even if it's not the finished product, that's a step that we wouldn't have made elsewhere otherwise. And so although there are improvements that could still occur to Glassford Road, as well as potential other traffic calming elements, the first step is being taken with closing the road and seeing the results that come out of that. So that really, I suppose, is one of the driving reasons for staff to make this recommendation, is that we are able to achieve a result that is being expressed as a concern by a community, and we've seen measurable results, and we've saved the taxpayers some money. And if there was the opportunity, for example, when Glassford comes to be repaved, then we could put in some more elements of traffic calming on the road when those sorts of things arise. There are also other grant opportunities that we could do, but getting one step in place is a step that we didn't have before. So the other piece here is so the north end, we completed the improvements that was done a number of years back, so that one has been struck off the list. These lists are from the traffic calming master plan as recommended treatments: option A, phase 1, option A, phase 2, option B, phase 1 and phase 2. So the south end, which is the end by Franklin that is currently barricaded off, staff are recommending that there would be a reconfiguration of the intersection regardless, because that would slow cyclists and vehicles coming onto the road, cyclists anyway, and would also be barricaded off in a way that vehicles wouldn't travel through there, but emergency vehicles could get through there. If council opts not to keep the road closed, that reconfiguration of the intersection is also still recommended, and really probably, give or take, all that would be different is that there will be no bollards in place. So any vehicle could drive down there. And I think that this is an opportunity, again, looking for these opportunities for lower cost infrastructure. The developer has to replace the curbs on that side of the road, and we would be able to knock down that price by coordinating our work with them. Landscaping, we got $303,000 there. That's a reasonable amount of landscaping. However, we can take a step towards that by including that road in our tree planting plan. That already was one of the ones on our radar, regardless of traffic calming, because it's got a wider road dedication. And I think we can make it look a lot prettier along there. And having those trees in there also assists with slowing down traffic. The option B in the traffic calming master plan was the full closure. And so we've done the temporary one at the estimated cost of $3,000. And then the permanent solution is estimated at 91. Again, that dollar number could come down if we coordinate those works with the developer. And then they've got the speed cushions again at that cost. Now, one of the things that they did not include with the traffic calming master plan for the speed cushions, which is why they are higher than an inflated 2007 budget, was that you need, with that sort of wide road, you need curbing to narrow the road slightly and make sure that drivers aren't driving around those curb or speed cushions to avoid them. So after the closure, we expected traffic to increase on Gower Point Road, and it did, almost to the vehicle. The total count was just a little off from what the total vehicle was before. Total vehicle count was before we did the closure. I've got a table down there. Traffic on Dogwood increased significantly, and Glassford Road saw a 66% reduction in traffic. So that was good. Blaine Lane was the most significant percentage-wise of increased traffic, with 58 vehicles going through there when normally they were seeing around 8. Franklin Road, through all the counts, there was no increase on traffic on Franklin Road. In fact, at one point there was a bit of a reduction. So I wasn't expecting any increase on Franklin because it takes people out of the way, more out of the way. So any resident on Franklin, that's being put to rest. And the 85th percentile on all roads at or below 50 kilometer speed limit on both before and after the counts. The only one that dropped was Glassford, and so they've dropped down to 35 and 38 kilometers. What I suspect with that is that most of those people are residents, and or I would speculate most of those people are residents and a little bit more cognizant of the fact that it's not a through road and their families actually live down there, which might be the reason for more of that compliance. So these are the that table there is the reduction here of traffic traveling at various speeds. I do want to point out the drop in 555 vehicles, so down from 652 to 97, exceeding 50 kilometers an hour. So remember that 555, it's going to come back in a second. The combination overall, so when we combine the traffic of Gower Point with Glassford, what you see here is that there is actually a drop overall. Although there was an increase in speeders on Gower Point Road, there is a drop of 56% of vehicles speeding overall. And that points to me about what I talked about the condition of the road and how a road is built. And Glassford is built for speed. So people are going to drive in excess of the speed limit. So that was an unexpected benefit, is that the drop in speeders of 400. And I mentioned before, research indicates that a reasonable and prudent driver will drive the speed suggested by the roadway and traffic conditions. And that is why we have in the town road design requirements that are to be designed in a manner so that it is uncomfortable for drivers to drive at greater than what the speed limit is going to be on that road. And so rather than doing a dead straight road and putting speed limit signs on, we make the road so it's very difficult to drive faster than 30 kilometers an hour. So, and I've got my report in front of me. If there's any questions as we going along, I'm happy to take them at the end, but please speak up if there's something that needs to be said at this time, because while I'm doing this, I can't see you.
Okay, if I might ask a question of you, Director Newman, on Gower Point, planters have been installed which pinch the road.
Oh, on South Fletcher?
Well, on South Fletcher, which ultimately becomes Gower Point.
It goes into Gower Point, yep.
Yep. So planters were installed. So when you say tree planting, at this point, are you discussing actually putting trees in the ground or doing sort of a test study with planters to pinch the road so it isn't the wide open speedway, that it is a narrow road, and that would be done in conjunction with reduced speed limit signs? And
well,
is there
what I'll touch base with at the end, and really the answer is to that is really whatever you want. So my opinion is that the present road closure is doing what we wanted it to do. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't more that could be done to slow traffic further, to create infrastructure that is comfortable for cyclists. Ultimately, when that road gets paved, I'd like to see our local road standard applied there, which is the concrete bands and the asphalt. If council opted to open the road again and replace that with something like speed cushions and those pinch points, it really depends on how much money you want to spend. You could do those narrowing similar that we've got on South Fletcher, where you're actually planting trees in the narrowed portion. It's going to be a little bit different just because there isn't curb all the way along the road. And so, but it could easily be a planter. Otherwise, there would be trees that would be grown about a meter away from the road.
Okay. I've made my comment with respect to, opening the road and putting in pinch points. At this point, I will open it to council for comment. Councillor Dundretti.
Thank you. Well, I have no doubt that Glassford needs traffic calming. I would like, before I make my comments, and I read all the statistics, I just want clarification. I understand that the volume went down, but can you clarify in easy terms a reduction of speeding of 85% on Glassford Road? From a speed from what to what? Because if it's a reduction of speed from 100 to 80, doesn't mean too much. So could you please clarify that, and then I could go on.
One moment, I'm just going to go back to that table. Glassford, there we go. All right, so there was a reduction of people traveling between 20 and 50 kilometers, there was a reduction in 60% for the 85th percentile. Well, no, actually, that's just total, period. Sorry. So there was a reduction in six. So that's where the volume actually comes in, is there was a reduction in volume of 2,400 drivers, 2,400 cars over a 7-day period. 878 of those was the drivers that were driving 50 kilometers and less. And then 555 of those were driving 80 kilometers to 90 kilometers over the limit. And so we now have only 97 that were exceeding the 50-kilometer-hour. And there are tables in the back that can give you the counts of what speed each vehicle was traveling and when and what time of day they were traveling. The only anomaly with that one, I believe the degree of speeding or the when I say 60 to 90, I think more or less the percentages were probably about the same between 60 and 90. So you've got, X number of vehicles traveling 60, 70, and 80. The one where we did see a big difference was on Gower Point for some reason or other, is that we actually had 12 vehicles that during the week that traveled up to 100 in excess of 140 kilometers an hour, which hadn't occurred in the previous count. And so I couldn't tell you what that is attributable to. It's a small percentage, 12 vehicles over 13,000 vehicles. But all the same, that is something that that did curiously change. And whether that was a one-off and maybe 12 drivers that were annoyed that they had to go around, I couldn't tell you.
If I may, Councillor D'Andretti, I'm going to Councillor Lumley and then Councillor Ladwig, and then we can follow up with you if that's okay. Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with the recommendations. I just wanted to, and I can't, unfortunately, I can't stay on this meeting for, well, I can go a little past 5:30, but I have another appointment. But can I ask, Dave, I want to ask you a question. That's just a quick question, but or I've got two questions. But one, is there if it was up to you, and obviously not up to council, but if it was up to you as someone speaking for the town, what would be the preferred traffic? Obviously, it's clear with all these statistics, people are just cutting through Glassford, right? Yeah. So what would be the preferred? Would it be to keep them on Gower Point? If you could convince someone, if the road was open, but you could in other ways convince someone to just use, would that be the preferred route?
Yes.
Okay.
So Gower Point is the identified collector road.
Okay. And then from the stats, obviously, so if you have 66% down on Glassford, but you have 17% up on Gower Point, that means most of the Gower Point traffic's already exercising as a collector road, right?
It's got a higher number of vehicles on Glassford.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then when you read when the people on Glassford, and I'm just saying this because I know we're talking about putting upgrades onto Glassford Road, but the people on Gower Point were kind of just saying, well, I mean, we know it's like a collector road and we live on it. Maybe it needs some upgrades. I know there was the lack of sidewalks or any other support to have more cars going down that road. Would that be a more priority than fixing up Glassford? Or if there was only a limited amount of money, would that be something that's possible or no?
If this was purely up to me, the way I would approach it is we've got a low cost solution to reducing traffic on Glassford Road. Great, that's one for us. What the other projects that we now need to look at is one, do we want to spend any more money on Glassford to get it to be more conducive to the cyclists and the pedestrians? and so one of the things and then you mentioned the improvements on Garrow Point Road. So again, going at this phased approach that often finances have to dictate that for us, as well as the timing of development, I'd say keep it shut. Work with the developer opposite the road to reconfigure that intersection for emergency vehicles to get it further away from Franklin, which is going to be safer anyway. And then in conjunction with the developer, when he is putting down his sewer line, because any improvements we do down there now are going to get torn up in a year or two. So it's not much point in spending any money on Garrow Point right at this moment. Then we put aside money to pave the other side and put in the or see what opportunities we have to put in sidewalks as part of that project. I also think that in the short term that we should be putting in that shoulder along Garrow Point Road, because that is well, there is no safe place for pedestrians to walk on that stretch of road.
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
Okay.
Yeah, it is pretty tight.
Before we go to Councillor Ladwig, there's something that we've got to do before Councillor Lumley leaves, and that's item 4.1, which is the rescheduling of the meeting with respect to the development on the Stonehurst and Town of Gibson's property. And there's been a request to reschedule it to another meeting. Dates were provided. And if I could call on the corporate officer here to just remind council of the dates that we were offered up. And I'm going to be easy. I'm open for all of them.
Thank you, Councillor Crow. The first thing you need to do is table the discussion of item 3.2. Just table it, and when we've made this decision,
a motion to table item 3.2 at this point. Councillor Dunvetti, Councillor Lumley, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, back to you, corporate officer.
The dates that you were offered were March 23rd at 3:00 p.m.
Now that's a Wednesday.
That's a Wednesday. We have also received some information from the architects who wish to attend and make themselves available. And they have specific dates that they cannot do. So if March 23rd doesn't work and you wish to propose other dates, let me know and I'll check against the schedule provided by the architects to see if they are also available. But I think Leslie Ann had suggested 3 options: that we schedule a date where she can weigh in from her holidays, and she had thought the 23rd, 24th, 25th, or the 28th or 29th. And if she's still here, she can speak. No, she had to go. She was still here up until recently. So, and the other option was that she tried to work with Kirsten, but I think she preferred to weigh in from wherever she is, rather than have Kirsten take it over.
Okay. Councillor Lumley.
Does it have to be at 3:00?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
I prefer a different time.
Wow.
There is a time difference for her from where she will be. So 3:00 p.m. our time, translated to 6 a.m. where she will be. So if we move it earlier, it means, you know, very, very early or the middle of the night for her. So that's something to be considered.
What is preferred for you, Councillor Lumley, and then Councillor Ladwig?
You mean for time?
Time. Were you suggesting later or earlier?
Earlier, I would say.
Okay, but that
would be impossible, right?
For the director of planning, it would be yes.
Okay. Well, then I'll just.
3 o'clock.
I'm not. It's not. You know, I'm not. I was just curious. That's all. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Ladwig.
Would you prefer an evening meeting, perhaps, Councillor Lumley?
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
Councillor Ladwig.
I think Councillor Lumley, part of it is also my work schedule. Unfortunately, I hate to do that to council, but I think that's part of why this time slot always got picked. For me personally, 3 o'clock on the 29th. It's the Tuesday. That's the way my that time is booked off for me for council on Tuesdays. It works for me.
Is the Director of Finance still here? Can someone check the budget meeting schedule to see if she also had a meeting scheduled for March 29th? I don't have that in front of me right now.
Councillor D'Andretti?
I cannot attend on the 29th, only late. I mean, I will be traveling too, so.
Can I suggest that we send out, do you guys know how to do a
Yeah.
doodle poll? Like, let's do this offline? Or do we have to do this right now?
I think because of the number of people involved, I think we need to come up with something that we can leave the table with today. Is that correct, Corporate Officer?
It would be great if we could resolve it today and find a date that you're all available. And I believe Mark just popped his head in my door with some information from Leslie Ann, but I couldn't quite hear what he said, so I may want to check in. It would be great if you guys could pick a date that you're all available before we end the meeting today.
So of the days, the 23rd, people are saying does not work? No. 24th?
24th?
Maybe.
Councillors Lumley and Ladwig?
Mhm.
Does that, the 24th work for you? That would be the Thursday?
24th doesn't work for the architects.
You, Tracy.
Sorry, I'm just reading a email that came in from Leslie Ann just
Okay,
not
so
long ago.
let's take the architects' dates off the agenda then. So what dates aren't
Yes.
the architects available?
So there's the 23rd, the 29th, the 30th, and the 31st.
And the 28th, if it's after or before 2, it looks like, but that doesn't work for Leslie Ann. So you're right. Your dates that she just read out were right.
Okay, so the council's not available on the 23rd and the architects. So the 24th, were the architects available?
No, so we have the 29th, 30th, or 31st, and we do already have a special committee of the whole on the 29th, which is a budget, our budget meeting. So we'd be back in the same situation where we have a full agenda.
And
So-
Councilor Dradi's not available the 29th either, so.
Okay,
So now we're looking at the 30th or the 31st.
or we wait until the next committee of the whole, which is the 5th.
I think there was an issue with the director of planning that she needed some decision prior to the 5th, was my understanding.
She would like it sooner if possible.
Now, Councillor Ladwig?
I can make the 23rd work if others can. No, you can't? No, okay, sorry.
Okay, so we're looking at the 30th or the 31st.
Thank you.
I cannot make it the 31st.
Okay, can we make the 30th? Going once?
Well, can it be late? Because I have appointments, and if I will be like more towards the end of the day, maybe 4 o'clock will be feasible, or even 4 o'clock if you want.
I will give you a heads up at the planning committee meeting. The meeting went on for almost 3 hours.
Thank you so much.
So, you know, it's a meaty one. But for everyone else except Councillor D'Andretti, it works for the 30th at 3?
At 4 for me.
4 for you?
4.
Okay, so we're looking at probably 4 to 7 on the 30th.
Okay, I'll try.
4 to
Everyone,
6.
sorry?
4 to 6, let's say.
Well, let's aim for 4 to 6.
Then
But
we can
I'm
extend-
warning you now.
We can
it's-
extend it if we have to.
Okay. So we have the 30th, corporate officer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you making the time to schedule that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And back to Glassford Road.
I have to go. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lumley. Councillor Dendretti?
Well, I was going to make a suggestion because I have to go too, but what I would like to, if it's possible, is to hear, we have people in the audience that they want to speak. And I would prefer, for example, to have a better understanding of, because I'm still not convinced. My understanding is that Glassford, and I might be incorrect, it's a local one road. So the speed that we are trying to attain is 30K. So if there was a reduction, but not really the reduction that it is necessary, this could be a temporary plan, but we need to investigate. And I feel we never had a chance to have options. It was just the closing. So there's a lot of stuff that we need to debate. And it's unfair to have now to make decisions in 5 minutes.
No, I'm not, I'm going to go to the Director of Infrastructure. And it's why I brought up at the beginning, do we open the road, put in pinch points, reduce signage, and see what the impact of that is? But I'll go to the Director of Infrastructure. Mr. Newman.
Okay, so for starters, if you would allow me to just finish the highlights of the report, just so I make sure that you've got you've heard the pieces that I feel are key. And then when you see the recommendations, you'll also see that will tie in nicely, and you're not actually making a long-term decision, or you're not going to make a recommendation out of this for a long-term decision. So could you give me maybe 5 to 7 minutes more? And I think that you might be set up in a better position, if I might.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so back to the report. So the residents living on Glassford Road, so most of them were in favor of the road closure. The reason they wanted the road closure, because it was overwhelmingly about the safety of children, many who walk along Glassford Road to school or the school bus. So we're talking safety here. Concerns were raised were about Dogwood Lane pavement and Blaine Lane. Both of those are being used as alternative routes. Residents living on streets intersecting with Glassford Road, we had a lesser percentage of 40.5 in favor. However, the concerns raised can be addressed. The condition of Dogwood Lane is mentioned, same with Blaine Lane. There was concern about information being spread by person or persons against the closure. There was questions about emergency access, and that, again, misinformation, well, maybe not misinformation, misunderstanding of information regarding the closure to facilitate, the primary reason is to facilitate the creation of affordable housing lot. Residents living on Gower Point between Franklin and Dogwood obviously are not thrilled with the idea, because who would be saying, we're going to put more traffic on your road? Are you happy about that? So there's it's unsurprising that they would not be as thrilled with that. 32% not living on any locations in the vicinity. They also complain about condition of Dogwood, Blaine Lane, and strictly inconvenience. So it's a matter of convenience going through Glassford. So for starters, and I've got the resolutions to match this, condition of Dogwood Road, Dogwood Lane, it could be a win if council makes that resolution to address the condition of that. Condition of Blaine Lane could also be addressed. However, staff would suggest holding off on that one should the closure remain in place. Emergency vehicle access at the close point would also be addressed with knockdown bollards. And we would talk about that with the fire department. Pedestrian safety on Gower Point Road, we've already got that indication from council to see a gravel shoulder. I wouldn't recommend spending any more capital money right now on Gower Point Road because of the pending road works tearing those up. There was concerns about increased volume on speed on Franklin Road, and the traffic counts said no, that wasn't happening. The one other big thing here that I feel that council could address is what was termed a lack of transparency. And putting two and two together, it seemed that that was likely due to the rumors that were being spread that the closure of Glassford Road was strictly to facilitate the creation of an affordable housing lot. The figure here shows the size of the affordable housing lot should the closure remain in place. Now, figure two, if the closure does not remain in place, provides the size of the affordable housing lot. So bottom line is you can see the size of the lot doesn't change whether the road stays open or not. And whether or not council intends to, because as I say, we've already got a resolution to create that lot, whether council wants to sell that lot and put the money towards affordable housing versus build affordable housing on that lot would be helpful for residents to know that the part of the information is out there, and without all the information being out there, people are making up the gaps. They're filling in the gaps themselves. So I think the last item that I want to point out to you is some suggestions that I was hearing of unsafe practices that I cannot recommend strongly enough that council not follow. And that is the installation of stop signs at the intersection of Dogwood and Glassford. Stop signs are not intended for traffic calming. They are to control traffic at an intersection. I heard, although didn't look myself, that a 24-year-old study recommended the installation of stop signs. What I can tell you is firsthand that a heck of a lot happens over 24 years, and a lot more information is out there, and the installation of stop signs where they are not warranted is dangerous. The four-way stops typically are done where there is roughly an equal amount of traffic coming from each direction. And those four-way stops help control the flow of that traffic. Where a stop control is installed but not warranted, an average of 68 to 95% of the motorists approaching the intersection don't come to a complete stop. They see no reason for the stop sign and they disrespect the sign. And that ends up trickling down and creating a environment, so to speak, of ignoring traffic signs in general. I'm not, I wouldn't have that as a higher concern, but when you are expecting a stop there and vehicles do not stop, that becomes dangerous, because you have kids there that know that they got a stop sign and they cross anyway. And as I say, the vehicles don't necessarily stop. A high percentage don't stop. There's also studies that show they don't affect speed, and they affect more, they create more carbon dioxide and pollution. The other one that I need to, for you to be aware of, posting 30 kilometers an hour on its own won't do anything. What needs to happen, as I mentioned, is the configuration of the of the road needs to prevent drivers from driving faster than 30 kilometers an hour. Now, there are methods out there. There are traffic calming methods, and I presented some of them from the traffic calming master plan. However, just posting it without anything else, not going to do anything. The reasons that staff are recommending the closure remain in place is the road closure achieved the desired outcomes of reduced speed on Glassford Road by 85%, a reduction in the volume of vehicles using Glassford as a shortcut by 64%, an overall reduction of 56% in vehicles exceeding the speed limit on when you combine the results from both Gower Point and Glassford. Residents of Glassford Road have responded to the survey, and they're 74% are those in favor. These are the residents that are directly impacted by the closure. Approximately 59% of residents living on roads intersecting with Glassford are not in favor of the continued road closure. Many of the reasons for residents not being in favor could easily be addressed. And those are those three key points that I mentioned. The road closure is the least costly of the options in the traffic calming master plan to implement. There is an opportunity to have the full closure completed in conjunction with the works required of the Block 7 developer. And at the time of writing this report, as you know, there were more 2022 projects that could be financed through available funding. So lastly, the recommendations, and this is where in a way you can put off the decision for a little bit, that the trial closure on Glassford remain in place at least until the 2022 5-year financial plan has been approved, so that you can determine whether or not you have money to do an alternative traffic calming should you wish to do so. And so we're saying just keep it in place until you have determined that in balance with the other demands for money. That staff be instructed with the tree planting on Glassford Road, regardless of what happens, whether we keep the road closed, open, other traffic calming, etc., that tree planting on Glassford Road is a great pre-defined location by staff, that planting of trees would be ideal. And that staff be instructed, to proceed with the repaving of Dogwood Lane as part of the 2022 paving rehab program. That would address the other concern. And then, as I mentioned, bollards at the closed end should that road closure remain in place. And then lastly, although it's nothing to do directly with the closure, is just encouraging that a letter from council conveying council's intent to create a parcel at the south end of Glassford Road. The decision's independent of any decision to close Glassford Road. Includes a diagram that was in my report. And if council was able to say, yes, we're definitively going to be selling this lot, that might put some hearts at rest, because there appears to be some residents, quite possibly in the vicinity of the proposed lot, that might be opposing the idea of supportive housing at that particular location. So I think if it was clear as to what council's intent is, then you would put a lot of minds at rest and have the residents along that way be clear on what's happening. And the only reason I'm saying that on this is because we have a council resolution to close the road, to create a lot already. Now what? And I think that this has affected the perceptions anyway. I don't know if it would, how much it would have done to the actual results of in favor or not, but certainly it has come up in this process that is a question that remains for residents.
Okay, thank you, Director Newman. Something right away I want to clarify is at no point was that a creation of a lot there considered for supportive housing. It was considered as a lot for potential sale, and whether it became affordable housing or the funding went to affordable housing, but it was never an option for supportive housing.
My apologies. That was my my slip of the tongue. I did mean
yeah, and it's just something that that with what we went on with School Road, it would I could see where it'd be problematic. Councillor D'Andretti and then Councillor Ledwig.
Thank you. I think just with regards to this last motion, when I look at the figure 2, my impression, it doesn't seem, it seems that the lot is, it's gonna obliterate Franklin Road. So I know this is just a sketch, but I think because these whole thing has become a kind of contentious issues for many, not for everybody, but for many. I suggest that before I write a letter is written, that there's some demonstration or some how this lot is going to be created, maybe some study, because actually for the lot to be created, there has to be certain guidelines, right? It's not that this will not impact Franklin Road, because when I look at it's actually a weird design, right? There's a lot that triangulates, and then, I mean, this is going to be an interesting thing. Yeah. So I think this is one of the issues that people are also concerned with this lot. And then,
are you able to see my screen right now?
Yes,
it's
yes.
very small.
Well, this is just a sketch, right? So it doesn't give. And then obviously, I think it is the, and I understand why the director wants the letter just saying there's nothing to do, that we will create the lot independent. But I think a better design and some confirmation of size, I think would help. With regard to the pave, I'm not gonna, I think I support, because I'm sure if the director of planning is saying that this Dogwood Lane is important to pave, I'm okay. With the tree planting, I didn't see, just a clarification, is it the tree planting will be on the sidewalk? What's the goal? It's like how many trees? I have no idea. So I would like to know how many trees. I mean, if we have to instruct staff to do that, it would be nice to have at least a design to say that's where the trees are going, the kind of trees or whatever. And with, I'm okay in, for this motion to keep close until we finish we approve the 22 5-year plan, because I still feel that even though the trial has been successful for some outcome, and I understand the volume was very successful and the speed, I'm not convinced, because I need to understand the metrics. I still didn't fully understand the breakdown of the reduction. But I think for many people are still a concern, and it's very hard to, I think we need to discuss. I would like to see more options, right? Options in the future, and perhaps there's this becomes a temporary thing until we get more funding. But I never saw a study of the alternatives and even the pros and cons of any alternatives. So it's very hard to make decisions like that. But I support I support these motions. And the only one I would like to see before we get a letter from the mayor, from the mayor's signature, I would like to myself to see that this lot is not going to disturb any impact, negatively the flow of Franklin and even Glassford and so on.
Councillor Ludwig.
I'm sorry to be a stickler in the mud, but I'd like to make a motion that we defer this conversation. I'm not willing to vote on any of these things right now. I'm hungry, I'm tired. It's an hour past our scheduled end time. My dinner's waiting for me. I just don't think this is too big of a conversation to be having in this crammed manner. We've received a petition from I don't know how many residents in this neighborhood that are opposed to this closure. We talk about the importance of waiting until the budget comes through so we know whether or not what our finances are in designing this project. But meanwhile, that makes no sense to me, because all the funding that's supposed to be going towards this project is within a fixed grant application. So what we do with the rest of our budget, I just don't even understand. I've yet to see a budget for all the projects underneath the $650,000 active Linkway budget line item. So I don't know how much we should be spending on that. Well, I don't need to see the budget.
18,000.
18,000 is what we've. Okay, so I would like to see, a budget breakdown for all 6 or 7 of these projects that are underneath this grant. I mean, either way, this is just too big of a conversation. I feel for us to be cramming into this narrow window. And this has been on the books for a long time. I know I'm thankful that we're bringing it to our attention now, because we did commit to doing that in February. So we're kind of on target there. So that's great. But this just isn't the way we should be making this decision right now, in my opinion. So, so I make a motion to defer this conversation to the next committee of the whole.
Yeah, I'll support, I'll second.
Okay. I have no problem deferring this. I think something else that we probably need to do with this discussion is there has been feedback we've received from the community. And I think, you know, I'm looking at the moment to our audience. I see one member that I recognize immediately from the immediate area that's in attendees. But I think, you know, some of the information that Director Newman has presented, valid, you know, with respect to the impact the closure has had with reduced speeding, some of the anomalies we've seen, and I think we perhaps need to you know, defer it so we have full council representation making the decision. But I think we also need to perhaps do it in a format where we can have a little more engagement with the community. So they're seeing, you know, the information that Director Newman has presented to us, because we can only assume that people have read the agenda, but you know, that's an assumption which is probably fallacious. So to that end, I would also, I would call the question on deferring this to another meeting. I can't say that it's going to be the next one because we have budget again in the next upcoming committee of the whole. So I would turn to staff to see when it might possibly be rescheduled.
Yeah.
Are you calling the question? All in favor?
Well, I'm going to, yeah, I'll call the question, but I would like staff input as to when it might come back, because we have people in the audience who are obviously have vested interest in this, and it'd be nice to walk away from this. Director Newman, if you want to say something.
I could make a suggestion. So for starters, the first one saying keep it in place until you've gone through your budget process, what it means is it's going to stay in place just until May or whatever, because we don't know whether you have money or not. If you defer it, it doesn't matter either, because we're not proposing to pull that out until council understands as to what other options they may wish to entertain.
Yeah,
and so honestly, it doesn't matter. There's no kind of time sensitivity around this. I do think that some thought needs to be done around the messaging about the affordable housing lot, because that does seem to be influencing what residents are coming back with, and then also a willingness for paving dogwood may also help people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if what we could look at is, we'll defer it. I'll look to Rebecca to come up with a date that it could be moved to. But what I would like, if possible, Director Newman, when it comes back, because it's one thing to discuss, you know, like was mentioned earlier, just putting in planters to pinch with reduced speed signs. If we could be given some sort of indication what that would cost.
So yeah, certainly. Those would be recommended to be in at least 5 locations. One location is not going to do anything.
Yeah, I think if you can just come back with that information for the next meeting, I don't think we need to get into the nuts and bolts of it at this particular time. What I'd also like to see, and reduced speed limit, and if we have a cost associated with putting in the pinch points, what it would involve actually opening it, but with the narrowed venue of where the lot line would be and the narrower opening onto Gower Point.
Yeah, that, and I think that
And there obviously there is a cost involved with that because there's roadworks involved.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'll turn to the corporate officer for an alternate date.
Your next regularly scheduled committee of the whole is April 5th. The budget by then is expected to have moved forward to the council meeting stage, where the recommendations will have been brought forward to council. So what you have slated right now for April 5th is a delegation potentially from the Sunshine Coast Skating Club, which was the request of council, and 2 reports coming forward from the Director of Planning with regard to liquor license and a liquor license and temporary use permit application. That's what is scheduled right now for your April 5th, 2022. So I think depending on how much discussion there is around the liquor license reports, there should be time to deal with this on April 5th. And
so if everyone is in agreement, I'll call the question that we defer this to the committee of the whole meeting, April 5th.
I'm unfortunately away on April 5th, but I'm not going to hold up the process.
Okay.
No, that's fine. I'll certainly provide my comments to council if they're open. I can email them to you, what have you.
That'd be great.
But I just think it's not appropriate to be making decisions like this under this kind of pressure.
the alternative maybe then is April 19th, which would be the following regular committee of the whole, would be April 19th, if that works for Director of Infrastructure Services and Council.
I would prefer that one if
The
that's an option.
Okay. Does that work for you, Councillor Ledwig? Okay, so the 19th, Councillor D'Andretti, before I call the question.
Yes, okay, yeah.
You have a question or?
Yes, I have a question. Well, with regards to the creation of the lot, can the Director of Infrastructure, can you also bring like a more detail and also the guidelines? I mean, perhaps when, let the public know that when you create a lot, you have to follow prescriptions, and that will be, and the size.
Now we can come up with building envelope and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Because right now the sketch, it doesn't give any confidence. And again, in terms of alternatives, what I would like to know, there's even actually Track sent a letter, and I really appreciate, because they talk about alternative with analysis, pros and cons, without just being a verbal thing and being done by traffic specialists. So
I've had traffic specialists engaged in this.
Okay, but where are their report? That's what I'm saying. Can we put something together where because when it comes to verbal, it's very hard to get the discussion, right? When we read a good reporting, it's very easy to understand. So right now the reporting was about speed, but about the alternatives, I'm still not clear. And then the objective, if we want to make one thing that I have been worried as well, we want to create, like what they say, AAA, right? Accessible to all, to cars as well, to people, bikes, pedestrians. And if this is going to be a follow-up of Gower Point, which we know Gospel Rock is going to be a walkway. So we need to provide good attention to this road in terms of investment as well, even if it's going to take a little bit. So for me, I would like to see more alternative. I understand that calming is an important thing, but I would like to see the scenarios and the pros and cons of each one, and if it's possible.
Okay.
So I've got down here pinch points at 5 locations, planters, the realignment of the intersection, which personally I think that is worth pursuing regardless. It's got to be moved for the affordable housing lot anyway, and it's consistent with the traffic calming master plan. We would have to do traffic counts before and after, otherwise you're just going to get people's impressions. You want a better diagram of the lot, and one of these things too is just how we can do it for how we can do it for as reasonable a cost as possible.
Okay, so that'll you'll be back to us on the 19th then, sir.
That's the plan.
Okay, all in favor?
Well, Councilor Crowe, can I just, because I heard what's going to be the cheapest one, but are we talking about providing all the options so council can ponder, can debate?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
okay, yes, so
They're-
it's not just
those are
looking at
already
the,
those were already provided in the report. Your traffic calming master plan.
oh, okay, so can we have, because it's not here, right? So I heard, but I wasn't sure if this plan was very old and I didn't look for, okay.
2007.
2007, kind of old, but okay. And it can we easily access on our
I
document?
believe it was up. I believe that it was put on the website.
It was
Okay.
in the agenda
look.
for this meeting, Councillor Dendretti.
Sorry?
The original plan was included. Now, actually,
Excerpts were-
if you go to the link on the front page, it wasn't, when you download the agenda, it wasn't there, but when you click on the link in the online, it does come up.
Oh, so I never saw that. Okay, but fine, I'll look for it. Thank you.
Alrighty, so you're comfortable with what's being asked of you, sir?
Mhm.
I believe so. Councillor Ladwig, did I capture everything, do you think?
Yeah, as long as we clearly, like, I mean, I know options, like, I'm totally in support of what Councilor DeAndretti's asked for. She's asking for options, and it needs to be laid out in a way that is very clear to follow, like option A, option B. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
If they were titled, like option A, closing the street, option B, pinch points, option C, speed bumps, and really clearly lay out the cost of each one and the pros and cons of each one. I just found it hard to follow.
Mhm.
But I'm happy to have this conversation offline too, if you'd like, if I could provide my thoughts to you more and kind of help me.
Just email me.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. We're back on the 19th.
Yeah.
Okay, calling the
enough.
question.
All in favor.
Thank you. Already. At this point, and thank you very much, Director Newman. It's aren't you glad we didn't have to deal with Stonehurst on top of this today? At this point, I will, and being mindful of time, I see we've got two people in attendees who would like to comment. I will ask the corporate officer to move over Mr. Evans.
Mr. Evans should be joining you now.
We should have done it ladies first. I apologize.
Oh, well, if you do first come, first served, he had his hand up for a long time.
I know his arm must be just throbbing for having his hand up for so long. Mr. Evans, please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council, for this opportunity. I congratulate the town of Gibsons in the British Columbia Active Transportation Design Guide case study holds Shaw Road as a good example of traffic calming and road sharing. It seems like an ideal model for Glassford Road. I am confused at one point, and I'm just asking for clarification, because please confirm that closing the south end of Glassford Road changes the road into a cul-de-sac.
A dead end cul-de-sac, sure.
Yes, okay. And now that's over 500 meters long. My next question is Council aware that the Transportation Association of Canada recommends cul-de-sacs be no more than 150 meters long?
I actually know that too.
Yes, that exceeds even Maplewood Lane. It is recommended that at least two connections to the existing roads in case of emergency. If we close Glassford Road, we have none because the existing roads would be a local road, class 1. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, where do I error in that?
Because there would be a fire exit, an emergency access, at the south end where the barricades are. And should Blaine remain closed, there would also be an emergency access there. And then, of course, Dogwood.
Okay, I was referring to the standard, which states that it's a local road, class 1 local road for emergency access. And so neither of those would meet according to that standard. Is council aware that the town of Gibson's subdivision and development service and stormwater management bylaw number 1175 2012 states that a cul-de-sac should not be more than 200 meters. And it says shall.
I think perhaps, sir, what we're getting in, I'm not questioning what you're stating. I think what we're looking at is a temporary situation, which we're looking at potentially, coming up with an alternate solution to. So
Yes.
I think, in all fairness to Director Newman, what we need to look at is what he comes, I think what we're suggesting, we've heard the comments you've made to us with the last presentation you made to us. And what we're looking for is common ground here, where we can potentially look at having the achieved effect of reduced speed on Glassford and create an opportunity where it is accessible from both ends. This is, I think, one of the options that we're strongly looking for. So I think, in all fairness to Director Newman, we need to see what he comes back with on the 19th.
Okay,
And we
fair
totally
enough.
recognize what you're saying with respect to existing legislation. But I think, as I said, in all fairness to Director Newman, we need to see what he comes back with. And, we're not disputing what you're saying about distances from cul-de-sacs and the recommendations within various subdivision bylaws and things like that. But I think until we have the report from the director, it would be prudent to see what he offers up. I think he's probably aware of most of the information that you're providing to us again at this time, sir.
Okay, I thank you for that. And so I'll just sign off by thanking the council for their time and continued support in this matter and the support of safety and in our road network. Thank you.
And I can only assure you before you leave, Mr. Evans, that, public consultation in this is going to be critical. We've committed to it and we're going to move forward in that direction.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir. I believe Denise Dombrowski also has her hand up, corporate officer.
Yes, she should be moving over, I hope.
Thank you.
There, she should be moving over now.
If you can unmute yourself, please. There you are.
Thank you. And I'll make this very quick because I can speak to a couple of the points at the April 19th meeting. But one thing I would like to say is that on the town website under Glassford lot creation is the statement, this road end could be made larger with the closure of Glassford Road at this end, which would allow for the development of a single family home with basement suite and garden suite. On the frequently asked questions that was sent around to the latest survey, it states closure of Glassford Road does not create a larger area for potential lot. So which of these statements is true?
The second one. The second one. Once we had sat down with planning, I didn't realize that out-of-date information was still on there.
Okay, so I'd like to interrupt.
Hence some of the confusion. And so that diagram that was provided in my report provides a lot area that doesn't change whether the road is open or closed.
I see that now, but there has been some criticism voiced by you about the rumors, I guess, that that these two things are tied: the closure of Glassford Road and the affordable lot creation. And I would just like to say that this kind of confusion arises from information that we are relying on your website. So it's frustrating So just one other quick contradiction is that I just wanted to confirm that you said, because Glassford Road calming is under the grant for active transportation network upgrades grant of $675,000. And I just want to confirm that you said that there was $18,000 of that for Glassford Road. And I'm just wondering why so little?
Yes, I agree as far as the lot size go, that it's important to have that information up to date. And it's also why I was recommending that council put out a letter. As far as the note of person or persons and rumors, those were actually pulled from comments from the survey itself.
Yes, I realize that. However, it was your choice to bring it up to us.
It was attached to the report, the survey results. The grant project, why? Because that project was simply the road closure and pavement markings. The anything bigger than that would we felt was going to put that project or that grant application out of reach.
And so I'm just wondering then why it is listed as the very first road under that active transport network upgrades on your website. This again leads to confusion and expectations that result in so-called misunderstandings and frustrations on the part of people who think that they're keeping up, yet it turns out that what is on the website is perhaps not as representative or can be easily misunderstood. So thank you for your time. I will bring up the rest of my points at the April 19th meeting. And Councillor Ladwig, you can get some dinner now. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, seeing no other hands up at this point, I would mention our next regular Committee of the Whole meeting is held Tuesday, April 5th, 2022 at 3 p.m. And I would look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Ladwig, Councillor Dendretti, all in favor. And I also thank you, Director Newman. This has been a massive load of information and material to deal with in a single meeting. Quite frankly, had the opportunity presented itself, it would have been nice to have broken it down probably into about 4 meetings, because it's just an awful lot to deal with.
Yeah, there was a lot more information there than I anticipated when I started writing the report, for sure.
Yeah, it's and it's money, and we're all concerned about budget spending. So at this point, we'll see you all back with bright, smiling, cheering faces at 7 o'clock. And